Chapter 40-57. After a while, Xiaohua's lips left Xian's forehead. The faint green light had already disappeared. Xiaohua looked at Xian and said in a low voice, "Go back. One day, I will go to the Immortal Palace to find you." Xian's eyes rekindled with hope. "I know you will. Xiaohua's name will definitely resound throughout the 3 continents." Gotcha. 9 bolts of lightning struck down simultaneously, shattering Huading, the sea of flowers, and everything else. A chair on the back of a colorful phoenix appeared out of thin air. Xian reluctantly landed on the chair, and he saw tens of thousands of colorful clouds shooting up into the sky. Pillars of noble chi propelled the colorful phoenix up into the sky slowly. Xiaohua. A sweet smile appeared on Xian's face. She said, "Seeing you today, this life is enough. If fate wills it, we will meet again." Xiaohua slightly raised his hand and said with a smile, "There is no need for fate. We will meet again soon. Xian, you have to believe me." "Okay. I believe you." Xian smiled. The entire night sky was lit up, and the rainy night shone brightly. Not far away, Tao Wu's figure also turned into a stream of light and shot into the sky. Along with the colorful phoenix, it disappeared into the void. Damn it, this is a little strange. Seeing all the strange phenomena disappear, Xiaohua carefully thought about it and felt a little apprehensive. Xian came out for no reason and left for no reason. Her strange emotions were really strange. "Disciple." Xiaohua raised his hand and said, "Have you had enough?" "No." Fujiwen obviously knew what Xiaohua was teasing him about. He said honestly, "There are immortal palaces inspectors nearby. How would I dare to be rash?" "What did Tao Wu say?" Xiaohua asked in a low voice. "I feel that there is something strange about it." "Indeed." Tao Wu's words were also strange. Fujiwen agreed. However, no matter how much I tried to get her to say, she didn't say anything. In the end, when thunder fell from the sky, she sighed and said, "Thunder rises, rain falls, flowers wither, 3 cups of fate end, from now on we are strangers." Tisk. Xiaohua smiled coldly. He looked at the dark sky and said, "What nonsense end of fate. Xian treated me like this. How can I let her down? However, Master, this matter is rather difficult." Fujiwen whispered, "Jianghong bears the burden of the Grotto Heaven River. If Lu Yi wants to form a relationship with Jianghong, he has to bear the burden of the Grotto Heaven River. Moreover, Princess Xinxin is the princess of the Immortal Palace. Master, your task is very important. Of course, for the sake of my own happiness and yours, I have no choice but to cultivate properly." Xiaohua nodded and said, "Let's go, let's hurry back to the Soaring Dragon Mountain Range. Master will inform you that we still have to make a trip to the Longevity Town." "Master, why are you going to Longevity Town?" Fujiwen was puzzled. "Aren't you rushing back to the Soaring Dragon Mountain Range to enter seclusion? Plans cannot keep up with changes." Xiaohua said helplessly, "I have no choice but to go to Longevity Town. A very important relative of mine is there." "Ah. Master still has relatives." Fujiwen was extremely shocked. That might not be the case. Xiaohua's heart was somewhat irritated for no reason. He waved his hand and said, "We can only go and take a look to know." "Master," Fujiwen asked in a low voice, "from here to the Soaring Dragon Mountain Range, we just happened to pass by Pingshan country. What do you think?" Xiaohua nodded. "No problem. Since I have already promised you, I will definitely do it." This Kunlun immortal realm is extremely spacious. Moreover, the heaven and earth origin qi is increasingly abundant. Not to mention your Fu family, even if you Zhongshuan and Chang Yuan two families come here, it won't be a problem. Thank you, Master. Fu Jiwen was extremely happy. Disciple has already told them. However, junior brother Yu and junior sister Chang's relationship with their families is not good. Therefore, they do not plan to go back and invite their families to stay in Kunlun Immortal Realm. Although junior brother Wang Bianfei did not say anything, it seems that he also misses his mother. Alas, the ancients have a saying that when one's parents are present, one should not travel far. It really makes sense. Xiao Hua sighed and said, blood ties cannot be cut off no matter what. Master originally wanted to go to Longevity Town first and then return to the Soaring Dragon Mountain Range. It seems that I should return to the Soaring Dragon Mountain Range first. Thinking about Wang Bianfei's mother missing her son in the Soaring Dragon Mountain Range every day, Master feels very uncomfortable in his heart. Yes. Fu Jiwen's expression was somewhat gloomy. Disciple's parents are already old. If Disciple does not return, I'm afraid that I will not be able to see them anymore. Let's go. Xiao Hua said with a smile. Then what are you hesitating for? Of course, your parents chasing you out of the sect is also for your own good. But then again, even if they did something wrong, think about how they raised you. You should be filial to them every day. Fu Jiwen previously had a gap with his parents because of Tao Wu's background. Now that Tao Wu was a female official of the Immortal Palace, wouldn't she be 100 times more noble than an ordinary woman in the world? Therefore, the grudge in Fu Jiwen's heart disappeared, and he was eager to return home. Several months later, in the mountain range on the west side of Ping Shan country, Xiao Hua stood on the flying carriage with a smile. Seeing Fu Jiwen fly back dejectedly, he said with a smile, "What? Your parents did not come out with you?" My parents did not believe that Tao Wu was a female official of the Immortal Palace. Fu Jiwen said with a bitter smile. No matter what Disciple said, they always said that Disciple lied to them. It seems like they saw through your previous plan in an instant. Xiao Hua said with a smile. Master did not agree that day. You used the Immortal Palace as a cover, but did not have the Immortal Palace's token. How could you persuade them to go to the Immortal Palace? Besides, without the proper ceremony, it would not be legitimate. Why would they go to the Immortal Palace with you? Actually, the most important thing is that mother's health is not good, and father is not willing to leave Ping Shan country. As the saying goes, it is difficult to leave one's homeland. Fu Jiwen said with melancholy. But the more it is like this, the more Disciple is worried, Master understands. Xiao Hua nodded. Lightning flashed around his body as he said, Look at Master's methods. Master, you can't really. Fu Jiwen suddenly remembered what Xiao Hua had said to him earlier. Without waiting for Fu Jiwen to finish, Xiao Hua's figure disappeared. All right. Fu Jiwen sat on the flying carriage and quietly looked in the direction of Ping Shan country. He said helplessly, Looks like I can only use force. In less than half a cup of tea's time, lightning flashed near the flying carriage and Xiao Hua's figure appeared. He said with a smile, Let's go, Disciple. It's done. Thank you for your trouble, Master. Fu Jiwen smiled and urged the flying carriage to fly towards the Soaring Dragon Mountain Range. At this time, Yu Province was not as calm as Xan had said. The Buddhist sect and Confucian cultivators were still fighting openly and covertly. Chaotic Buddhist senses and eye-clearing techniques appeared in the air from time to time. Fu Jiwen had only been flying for a few days, but there were already several groups of Confucian cultivators blocking his path. In the end, Xiao Hua put away the flying carriage and had Fu Jiwen accompany his parents in the space, while he flew towards the soaring Dragon Mountain range. Xiaohua returned to the Fortune Gate not just a day later. Xiong Yi and the other disciples did not expect him to return so soon. They were ecstatic to welcome him. Xiaohua's actions in the Fiend God blood pool had spread throughout the hidden immortal continent. Naturally, the disciples of the Fortune Gate had also heard of it. The scheming disciples like Xiong Yi had long seen the hope of Xiaohua's rise. They also saw the Fortune Gate's reputation shaking the hidden immortal continent in the future. They were full of confidence in their own futures. Xiaohua sat on the Fortune Dao Palace's throne. He did not ask about the Fortune Gate's development during this period. Instead, he explained his cooperation with the Flowing Merchant Union in detail. He also ordered Xiong Yi, Lan Ji, and Li Xiang to bring out some spiritual herbs, medicinal pills, and things from the Forbidden Spring Sea. He then released Wang Baifei and asked him to invite his mother. When Xiong Yi and the others saw that Xiaohua did not ask about the Fortune Gate's affairs, they knew that he trusted them. However, they still mentioned some important matters. When Xiaohua heard that due to the recent war and famine on the hidden immortal continent, a large number of refugees had appeared, and that the Fortune Gate had accepted tens of thousands of children as disciples in order to expand their forces, he frowned. He pondered for a moment, and his consciousness entered the space to discuss with the green-robed Xiaohua. He then ordered Li Xiang to divide the disciples and gather them in one place. When Xiong Yi heard this, he immediately thought of the tens of thousands of disciples that Xiaohua had accepted in the Jiang country's capital. He hurriedly advised, "Master, you still have to cultivate. With so many low-level disciples, it's better to let the disciples teach them." Xiaohua smiled and said, "My Fortune Gate has just been established, and its foundation is not stable. We should recruit more disciples. But if we recruit so many disciples at once, the low-level disciples won't be able to teach them. After all, they also have to cultivate." Yes, disciple did not consider it properly. Xiong Yi's face was burning. Disciple only feels that they are pitiful, Xiong Yi. Xiaohua shook his head and said, "You did the right thing. Master is not blaming you for this. If you did not accept them, they would have starved to death the next day in the wilderness. Even if my Fortune Gate does not develop, we must do these good deeds. Master means. There is no need to say more now. In short, leave the disciples that you can teach, and Master will take the rest." "All right." Seeing Xiaohua's determination, Xiong Yi did not refute. Li Xiang frowned again. "Master, didn't you just come back? Why do you still want to go out? It can't be considered going out." Xiaohua smiled and said, "I heard that the Longevity Town is going to put on a good show of seeking scriptures in paradise. Master wants to go and take a look." So that's how it is." Prince Lan smiled and said, "Disciple has long heard that the Buddhist sect has pasted a Buddhist list in the Longevity Town, waiting for a suitable arhat to reveal the list. It has already been half a year, right? No suitable arhat has appeared. I'm afraid this matter will be ruined. The show that Master wants to see won't happen." "Absolutely not." Xiaohua smiled. But just as he said this, Xiaohua's heart suddenly moved and he stood up from the jade chair. Excitement appeared on his face as he exclaimed, "That's right, although there are not many arhats who can go to paradise to seek scriptures, there is definitely more than one. Why must Jiang Luer send himself to death?" Chapter 4058. Master. Xiong Yi and the others looked at each other, not knowing what Xiaohua was talking about. "Master." At this time, Wang Yifei brought his mother to the main hall and was about to greet Xiaohua. Xiaohua flew in the air, waving the Kunlun mirror in his hand. A beam of light covered the two of them as he said, "Go to the Kunlun paradise first, we'll talk later." He then turned to Xiongyi and asked, "Are those disciples ready?" "Of course." Xiongyi hurriedly stood up and answered, "Those who can be taught and those who can't be taught are separated. There is no need for special preparation." "Good." Xiaohua waved his hand and said, "Bring Master there." Master suddenly thought of something and needs to do it immediately. Actually, if Master has something to do, there is no harm in doing it first. We'll talk about it after you're done. Xiongyi answered with a smile as he led the way. Xiaohua shook his head with a wry smile. Master thought that matter was already confirmed, but I didn't expect. Master received the news too early, the real thing hasn't happened yet. Therefore, Master is a little flustered. Xiaohua followed Xiongyi to the back of the mountain and looked at the neat rows of huts. They were very similar to the huts he saw in the Imperial Thunder sect. He nodded with satisfaction and then took out the Kunlun mirror. He released his consciousness and took the hut and the boy inside into the space. Then, without daring to delay, Xiaohua nodded to Xiongyi and the others and flew out of the soaring Dragon Mountain range. Looking at Xiaohua's back as he flew away in a hurry, Xiongyi was a little confused. He pondered inwardly, Master has already accepted more than 10,000 disciples, and now he has taken in another 20,000 children. In total, he has 30,000 disciples, which is more than the soaring Dragon Mountain range's Fortune Gate's disciples. Could it be that Master has other plans? Xiaohua didn't know what Xiongyi was thinking. He had already activated his flying technique and rushed towards the Longevity Town, wanting to stop monk Chun Zong before he took down the Buddha list. Of course, the premise was that Chun Zong was Jiang Luer. Looking at the familiar scenery below him, Xiaohua didn't dare to be too arrogant. He lowered his body slightly and used the appearance-changing technique, turning into a small nose and small eyes Zhang Xiaohua. Then, he took out his Confucian robe, held the feather fan in his hand, and used his flying technique to rush to the Longevity Town. Very quickly, the path that Xiaohua, Yuanya, Lu Yi, and Xiao Jian had taken to leave Longevity Town appeared beneath him. The scenery was still the same, but the people on the road were no longer the same people from back then. See. Xiaohua flew for a while and saw the Buddha in the air and the believers on the ground. He released a bit of his telekinesis, but it wasn't tight. Xiaohua gasped in surprise and exclaimed, "Why is there so much power of faith here? Could it be that the power of faith belongs to Xi Hang?" As he spoke, Xiaohua raised his head and looked at the 99-meter-tall Guanyin Bodhisattva standing in midair in the distance. Needless to say, the true body of the Guanyin Bodhisattva was the real Xi Hang. But the real Xi Hang had already passed away, and only the fake Xi Hang existed in this world. No wonder Mahavairakana, revered Buddha, had the idea of seeking scriptures in nirvana. This Longevity Town is just a town, and a Nanwa Guanyin Bodhisattva's golden body already has so much power of faith. If the entire hidden immortal continent was filled with temples and Bodhisattva's golden body, how much power of faith would that be? Xiaohua greedily inhaled. He knew that if he released the Bodhi Sarira now, perhaps Bodhi would immediately attain enlightenment. Unfortunately, in this Longevity Town, even if the Buddha Sarira wasn't in seclusion, Xiaohua would definitely not dare to release it. Thanks to the innate divine restriction in my Naiwan palace. Xiaohua rejoiced as he flew. If it wasn't for these innate divine restriction concealing the Buddhist aura, even if the Buddha Sarira didn't want to come out, this rich power of faith would have fallen into my Naiwan palace. At that time, it would be impossible to conceal it. This is Jiangchao Temple. When Xiaohua flew closer, he used the clear eyes technique to look. He had already noticed the changes in Jiangchao Ridge, and unconsciously became a bit dazed. After a moment, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Damn it, Jiangchao Temple is obviously my Dao sect's Daoist temple. How did it become a Buddhist temple now? Only, where is that so-called Buddhist list? Xiaohua looked at the left side of Jiangchao Ridge, but didn't see any trace of the Buddhist list. Then, he looked at Jiangchao Temple again. At this time, Jiangchao Temple was flourishing with incense. Rays of Buddhist light lingered above the temple. Within the Buddhist light, one after another, Buddha statues faintly appeared. Along with the sound of wooden fish inside the temple, the Buddhist light rushed out. This was precisely the imposing manner of a Buddhist bodhisattva overseeing the temple. At the same time, rays of tranquil Buddhist awareness slowly swept across the surroundings of Jiangchao Temple. With one look, one could tell that it was the inspection of the Buddhist sect's guardian heavenly king. Xiaohua pressed down on the cloud, and saluted a Confucian cultivator who was slowly flying by. "Greetings, fellow immortal, I have something to ask, fellow immortal, there's no need to be so polite. Is there anything I can help you with?" That Confucian cultivator was also very polite. "I heard that there is a Buddhist list of Mahavirakana in Longevity Town. It's to find people who are seeking sutras in nirvana. May I know where this Buddhist list is?" Since it's a Buddhist list, it's naturally inside the temple. The Confucian cultivator smiled and said, "Fellow immortal, it's difficult for you to see it. That Jiangchao temple only allows Buddhist disciples to enter. We Confucian cultivators are not even allowed to come within 10 feet of it." "Oh. The Buddhist sect is actually still so arrogant?" Xiaohua asked in a low voice. "I heard that on that day, wasn't there a Dongfang family disciple who attacked the Buddhist sect's Manjushri Bodhisattva with a sword and extinguished their arrogance? Alas, that was then and this is now." The Confucian cultivator sighed. "Now, the Immortal Palace is colluding with the Great Thunderclap Temple. They don't care about the fate of the 100 schools of Confucian cultivators, and actually do something evil like seeking sutras in nirvana. Even if we 100 schools of Confucian cultivators extinguish the arrogance of the Buddhist sect, what can we do? It's sad that they don't rise, angry that they don't fight. Alas, the pitiful immortal emperor." Xiaohua observed a moment of silence for the immortal emperor in his heart. He waved his hand and bid farewell to the Confucian cultivator. Although the Confucian cultivator's words were somewhat extreme, they clearly represented the thoughts of the majority of Confucian cultivators who didn't know the truth of the matter. Under the influence of the Confucian aristocratic families, these misunderstandings had increasingly deviated from the truth, and were increasingly disadvantageous to the Immortal Palace. Seeing that the clear eyes technique couldn't penetrate the Jiangchao Temple, Xiaohua didn't dare to use the transfiguration technique near the Jiangchao Temple again. He hurriedly flew out of the Longevity Town, found a secluded cave, and quietly transformed into the appearance of a young Buddhist monk, and once again rushed to the Jiangchao Temple. At the same time that Xiaohua entered the cave, a bamboo raft floated along the Liao River. The bamboo raft was very simple, and even somewhat damaged. Behind the bamboo raft stood an old fisherman holding a long bamboo pole. In front of the bamboo raft was a young monk wearing a clean monk's robe. His hands were clasped together, and he was piously looking at the Namo Guanyin Bodhisattva's golden body covered by silk on the riverside. He was chanting, "Namo Guanyin Bodhisattva." Wasn't this monk Jiang Luer, whose Buddhist name was Chuanzang? As the bamboo raft approached the Jiangchao Ridge, several Buddhist senses had already swept over it. There were also several clear eyes techniques. It seemed that they had already anticipated Chuanzang's arrival. However, Chuanzang was unaware of all this. Looking at the shore that was getting closer and closer, he turned his head and said very kindly, "Boatman, please stop here. I'll have to trouble you along the way. Little monk, have a safe journey." The old fisherman stood up shakily, raised his hand full of cracks, and waved benevolently as a form of farewell. Then, he propped the bamboo pole in his hand against the bluestone on the shore. The bamboo raft left the shore and slowly moved downstream. The bamboo raft drifted straight for several miles. The fisherman who had been standing steadily at the end of the bamboo raft suddenly trembled. His straw raincoat slowly disappeared, and the fisherman straightened up. Small heavenly flowers appeared in the void near him. The fisherman's wrinkled face also changed, revealing a solemn appearance. However, this Buddha's face was deathly pale, and even the muscles on his face were somewhat twisted. It was obvious that he was in extreme pain. Namo Amitabha. The Buddha chanted the name of Buddha, raised his foot, and stepped into the void and disappeared, leaving only the real bamboo raft drifting further and further away in the Liao River. More than 10 miles away, a patch of blood was sprinkled on the protruding rocks above the river. It was very dazzling under the noon sun. The ignorant Chuanzang, who had always been fearless, stood below the Jiangchao ridge. He respectfully put his palms together and looked at the golden body of Namo Guanyin Bodhisattva on the Jiangchao temple. He then tidied up his monk robe and chanted, Namo Guanyin Bodhisattva, Avalokitesvara Bodhisattva. After walking the deep Prajnaparamita for a long time, he saw that the 5 skandhas were all emptiness, transcending all suffering. Sarira, form is not different from emptiness, emptiness is not different from form is emptiness, emptiness is form. As Chuanzang chanted the sutra, he kowtowed with each step and walked up the Jiangchao ridge with great sincerity. This was a path of pilgrimage and also a path of spiritual sublimation. Chuanzang enjoyed walking on it very much. Every kowtow made his body feel relaxed and made him feel that he was one step closer to his ideal and pursuit. Chuanzang, who was immersed in his own world, did not notice that the mountain path, which was originally filled with people, had gradually become less and less crowded. The equally devout believers began to disappear. On the contrary, the sound of the wooden fish, the chanting of sutras, and the chanting of the Buddhas became louder and louder in his ears. Not only did the Jiangchao ridge have a strange phenomenon, but the entire Longevity town also suddenly became quiet. The noise disappeared, and the complete hostility turned into peace. Rays of Buddha light inexplicably gushed out. Perhaps there were people walking on the streets, or perhaps there were people buying and selling in the shops, but all these became the background. All the eyes, the focus of the entire hidden immortal continent and the nirvana world, now fell on the Jiangchao ridge and on the body of Chuanzang, who was kowtowing step by step. Tens of thousands of people were admiring, tens of thousands of immortals were holding their breaths, and tens of thousands of Buddhas were watching. Everyone was quietly waiting for the beginning of a new era, waiting for the beginning of a miracle, waiting for a good show to start. Chapter 40-59. At this place, the dangers that Chuanzang experienced before would no longer exist. No one dared to face the wrath of the immortal palace and the great Layin temple in public. No one wanted to disturb this ordinary monk's devout worship of Buddha. Although Chuanzang was already bearing the burden of the war between immortals and Buddhas, his meticulous movements showed the demeanor of a bodhisattva. Finally, a loud chime came from the Jiangchao temple. Chuanzang stepped onto the Jiangchao ridge and arrived before the golden body of Namo Guanyin Bodhisattva. When he got up again, he looked at the golden body of Guanyin Bodhisattva that was tightly covered by silk. An indescribable melancholy arose in his heart. He said softly, Namo Guanyin Bodhisattva, disciple is Chuanzang of the Jinshan temple. I came here to worship Buddha under the order of my Buddha. I didn't come to the hidden immortal continent, I didn't know that the Buddha's light here can't shine. At the same time, I also know the Buddha Lord's intention. I hereby make a great vow that if the golden body of Bodhisattva is not revealed in the hidden immortal continent, if the Bodhisattva's Taoist field is not revealed in the town of longevity, I will not attain the Buddha fruit in this life. Dong! Another bell rang as thousands of Buddhas chanted, Amitabha, Amitabha. Along with the chanting, a young novice monk came out from the side of the lotus seat of the Guanyin Bodhisattva. He put his palms together and said, Amitabha. Disciple Chongping greets Uncle Master. Amitabha, martial nephew is too courteous. Chuanzong hurriedly returned the greeting. He looked left and right and said with a smile, I came from the Golden Mountain Temple in the Elysium. Along the way, I heard that there are many believers in the Jiangchao Ridge of the town of Longevity. I wonder what happened today. All right, Uncle Master understands. Chongping replied, my Buddha has issued a Buddhist decree, and the senior brothers and senior uncles of the Pure Land of Ultimate Bliss have all come to support my river and tide temple. However, my Buddha is merciful and does not wish to incur the hatred of the Confucian cultivators. Hence, after paying respects to Buddha, they all turned back. However, the Confucian cultivators have been oppressing our Buddhist sect, so our Buddha's light can only shine in the Longevity town. Sigh, what a tragedy. Chuanzong sighed, Buddha delivers all living beings from torment and enlightens the myriad of worlds. This is the most important thing in the world. Why can't it be tolerated in the hidden immortal continent? Buddhism is vast and will not help those who are not fated. Chongping smiled and raised his hand. Martial uncle, you've come from afar to the Longevity town. Please follow me to the temple for tea. Many thanks, martial nephew. Chunzong nodded and followed Chongping down another mountain path. Chongping, who was in front of him, had no cultivation at all. At this moment, Xiaohua, who had just arrived at the Longevity town, suddenly felt a rarely seen aura suddenly descend from the sky, enveloping the entire Longevity town. At the same time, from another direction, an extremely dignified aura also appeared, surrounding the Longevity town. Everything in front of him suddenly became somewhat unreal, as if he, the mountain, and the people on the road had all turned into shadows. Not good. Lu is here. Xiaohua was startled. Sweat dripped down from his forehead. He complained about his carelessness in his heart. Almost without thinking, he released his spiritual force. Unfortunately, his divine sense was like nothingness. No matter how hard he tried, his divine sense could not leave his body. Moreover, his figure began to drift in the air. No matter how hard he tried to circulate his true essence, he was unable to take even half a step forward. Damn it! How could Xiaohua not know that the experts of the Buddhist sect and the Immortal Palace had already sealed off the entire Longevity town, eliminating any factors that would disturb Jiang Luer's announcement? Xiaohua's mind raced. He had brought Jiang Luer from the Xiaoyu continent to the Western Paradise. Now that he could wake up from his meditation, Xiaohua was very happy. If it was under normal circumstances, Xiaohua would definitely not stop Jiang Luer from doing anything for the Buddhist sect. However, it was unusual now. Jiang Luer had no strength to truss up a chicken. In front of the many forces of the hidden immortal continent, the Western Paradise, and the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm, any cultivator from these forces could easily kill Jiang Luer. Although the Immortal Palace and the Lane Temple were protecting Jiang Luer with all their strength, after the two forces came, countless methods would fall on Jiang Luer like a storm. If the two forces were to slack off, Jiang Luer would die. Moreover, the two forces might protect Jiang Luer now, but who knew what would happen in the future? What would happen in the future? Would they still care about Jiang Luer's life and death? Xiaohua could not take this risk. He could not let Jiang Luer, his only relative in the three continents, fall into such a dangerous situation. Xiaohua clenched his teeth and landed on the ground. He retracted his aura like an ordinary person and walked towards the Jiangchao temple. Amitabha. Chuanzong stepped into the Jiangchao temple. There were not many monks in the entire Jiangchao temple. There were also not many good men and women worshipping Buddha. Chuanzong chanted Buddha's name and said somewhat sadly, Martial nephew, the Longevity town is the #1 town of the Buddhist sect in the hidden immortal continent. The incense of the Buddha is still too. Sigh, Yes. Chuanzang Ping lamented, disciple has also heard from the Western Paradise's martial uncles that the incense of the Western Paradise is at its peak. Disciple really admires it. Unfortunately, if there was no one who prayed for the Sutra of Nirvana, not to mention the incense of the Jiangchao Temple, even the golden body of the Guanyin Bodhisattva would be pushed down again. Praying for the Sutra of Nirvana. Chuanzang stared blankly and asked puzzledly, what does that mean? Oh. Martial uncle actually doesn't know. Chuanzang Ping was very surprised. This matter has already spread throughout the hidden immortal continent. Martial uncle hasn't heard of it. Amitabha. Chuanzang was somewhat embarrassed. I ate and slept in the open all the way. When I rested, I recited Buddhist scriptures. I didn't have the chance to listen to other people's nonsense. So that's how it is. Chuanzang Ping's face was filled with reverence. Martial uncle, this is the right way to cultivate. I don't dare. Chuanzang quickly shook his head. My Buddhist sect has thousands of cultivation methods. Everyone has their own cultivation method. Martial uncle, this way please. Chuanzang Ping led Chuanzang to a Buddhist shrine in the Hall of Great Strength. He used his finger to point at a Buddhist decree emitting a faint Buddhist light and said, this is the Buddhist decree of praying for the Sutra of Nirvana. However, until now, this Buddhist decree has not been taken down by anyone. Oh. Is it that difficult? Chuanzang was somewhat in disbelief. He unconsciously took 2 steps forward and looked at it. Amitabha. Chuanzang Ping saw Chuanzang's gaze fall on the Buddhist decree and a smile appeared on his face. His whole body slowly retreated and the whole world stopped here. After an unknown period of time, Chuanzang's gaze moved away from the Buddhist decree. He then turned his head and looked at the golden body of Guanyin Bodhisattva on the Jiangchao ridge. The silk on the golden body fluttered in the wind. Chuanzang's gaze then turned to the west, the far west. Finally, his gaze fell on the Buddhist decree and a firm expression appeared on his face, Amitabha. Although it's 1,000 miles, although it's 10,000 miles, the Buddha is in this poor monk's heart. 1 step, 10 steps, what else can I ask for in the Western Paradise? Since disciple Chuanzang has already made a great wish for Guanyin Bodhisattva, disciple is willing to take down the Buddhist decree of the Buddha Lord. Then my Buddha's Buddhist light will spread throughout the hidden immortal continent. As he spoke, Chuanzang raised his hand and placed it on the Buddhist decree. Although the Buddhist light was faint, it was also endlessly tenacious. However, this Buddhist light could block the hands of thousands of bodhisattvas but could not stop Chuanzang. Chuanzang's hand touched a corner of the Buddhist decree. Wait! At this moment, a voice suddenly came from the originally silent Jiangchao temple. Chuanzang was slightly stunned. He turned his head and saw a faint shadow squeezing out from the crack of the door. Wasn't that Xiaohua who tried his best to pass through the longevity town and had no choice but to use all of his magical powers to enter the Jiangchao temple from the sealed void? Chuanzang was stunned when he saw a monk with a small nose and small eyes. This was because although he had never seen this face before, an inexplicable sense of familiarity arose from the bottom of his heart. He could not help but ask curiously, "Junior brother, do you have any orders?" You. Xiaohua saw that Chuanzang's hand was already on the Buddhist decree and naturally knew that the matter had reached the final step. He wanted to say a lot of things, but he also knew that no matter how many things there were, someone would not let him say them. He only opened his mouth and said, "Seeking the sutra in the Western Paradise is extremely risky. Have you thought it through?" Even though Xiaohua had only said a few words, the deep concern in his voice struck Chuanzang's heart harder than any hypocritical concern in the world. However, Chuanzang only smiled faintly. He turned his head to look at the Buddhist decree and replied, "Although this poor monk does not have the cultivation of Buddhism, this poor monk is still a disciple of Buddhism. Now that Buddhism needs someone to go through water and tread on fire, why can't this disciple be the person who steps into the sea of fire? Xiaohua still wanted to say something, but the difficulty in Chuanzang's words showed that this was his own choice. There was no coercion or temptation. Since this was the case, Xiaohua did not have too many reasons to stop him. After all, Chuanzang's path was still up to him to walk. Alas! Xiaohua shook his head slightly. His figure stood there and gradually solidified. Boom! Chuanzang's hand slightly exerted force. A pillar of Buddhist light shot up into the sky. Thousands of heavenly flowers were born from the void shattered by the pillar of light. Following the heavenly flowers, many fairies appeared. After the fairies, many small worlds emerged from the heavenly flowers. Billions of Buddhas were chanting the scriptures of Buddhism in the small worlds. Following this Buddhist light, the imprisonment of the entire longevity town suddenly disappeared. Xiaohua's feet also firmly stepped on the ground. Amitabha. Amidst the soaring Buddhist light, Manjushri Bodhisattva appeared riding on an azure lion. His compassionate face revealed a well-thought-out plan. The voice of Manjushri Bodhisattva resounded in the longevity town, Chuanzang, you have taken down the Buddhist decree. This time, the heavy responsibility of seeking the scriptures in paradise falls on your shoulders. This trip has to cross thousands of mountains and rivers. You have to experience difficulties and obstacles. The most important thing is that you have to walk this 1,000,000 miles of road step by step. You can't use any supernatural power beyond ordinary people. Do you have the determination? Disciple Chuanzang is a Bodhi monk. I don't have any supernatural power. Chuanzang's voice was originally low, but at this time, under the Buddhist light, it was like thunder. Not only did it resound in the River Tide Temple, it also resounded in the longevity town, and spread to the entire Yuzhou and even the 9 regions of the hidden immortal continent. Disciple came to River Tide Temple from Jinshan Temple, relying on disciple's feet, step by step. Now, I'm just going back to ask my Mahayana Sutra to come to the hidden immortal continent. Whether it's 10 years or 100 years, disciple is determined to let my Buddhist light spread all over the hidden immortal continent. Amitabha, Amitabha. The entire longevity town was filled with Buddhist light. It was peaceful and jubilant. Chapter 4060. Xiaohua, who was standing at the Rivertide Temple, stared blankly at this magnificent scene. He couldn't help but feel bitter in his heart, because everything was planned early on, everything was arranged in advance. Under this grand occasion, who knew how much blood was hidden, how many schemes were hidden? Perhaps this grand occasion was the beginning of the light of Buddha, but who knew if this was the end of the light of Buddha's annihilation? Who knew how many people would fall in this so-called grand occasion, and who would care about the protagonist of this grand occasion? In the light of Buddha, monks filed out of the hall of great strength. At the edge of the Chi of righteousness, Confucian cultivators wearing tall hats and robes came from afar. It was as if the killing intent of immortals and Buddhas that had accumulated for decades disappeared the moment Chuanzang unveiled the Buddhist decree. It was as if the war between immortals and Buddhas was just a joke. When immortals and Buddhas were having an affair, Xiaohua suddenly felt filthy and felt that he was not worthy of such a noble ceremony. He turned his head indifferently and floated out of the Jiangchao temple. It was not that no one noticed Xiaohua's departure, but the alert Confucian cultivators thought that Xiaohua was a test arranged by the Buddhist sect, and the Buddhist sect thought that Xiaohua was a chess piece of the Confucian cultivators. When they relaxed, Xiaohua had already disappeared before everyone's eyes. Xiaohua, who walked out of the Jiangchao temple, had the opportunity to seriously examine the longevity town that wrote his legend. Unfortunately, the longevity town was completely different from Xiaohua's previous memory. The roadside tea shed disappeared, the store where Xiaohua bought grain disappeared, the store where Yuanya bought buns on credit disappeared, and even the intersection where Xiao Jian set up his divination stall disappeared. Xiaohua looked at it for a while and was already bored. He turned his head to look at the high Jiangchao ridge, at the tall golden body of Guanyin Bodhisattva. Although the golden body was blocked by silk, the rich power of faith around it condensed into a mirror-like flowing light. Xiaohua had no doubt that as long as his Buddha relic Bodhi came out at this time, he would immediately be able to attain Bodhisattva's Buddha fruit. However, how could he dare to expose himself at this time? Guanyin Bodhisattva's Buddha fruit was different from other bodhisattvas, it could not be replicated. If it were not for the immortals and Buddhas crushing each other, how could an ordinary monk obtain so much power of faith? Of course, at this time, Guanyin Bodhisattva attained Buddha fruit and completely subverted the plan of seeking scriptures in paradise. This was directly the fuse of the war between immortals and Buddhas. Even the Mahavairakana revered one didn't dare to bear this responsibility, so how could Xiaohua risk universal condemnation? However, after a short while, Xiaohua once again looked towards the west thoughtfully. He thought to himself in bewilderment, Elysium doesn't seem to be in the west. Why did Luer look to the west before he took down the Buddhist edict? What does that mean? Forget it, go ahead. Xiaohua pondered for a moment, then felt a little disheartened. Luer is already grown up, he should walk his own path. When Xiaohua turned his head, his gaze landed on Liaojiang. It was from Liao River that he was rescued by Yuanya and brought to the Temple of River and Tide. At that time, his cultivation had not recovered, so he did not have the intention to explore Liao River. Now that he was standing in front of Liao River, he could not help but think of the sea eye of the West Sea and Liao River. Thinking of this, Xiaohua's figure flew up and headed towards the upper reaches of Liao River. Previously, some grains were planted on both sides of Liao River, but now it was flat and clean. The villagers planted Bodhi trees and sunflower lotuses, making it look lush and green. Xiaohua flew up for hundreds of miles. Suddenly, Dragon Vein Xiaohua trembled in his body and called out in a low voice, "Fellow Taoist, please stop, oh. What's wrong?" Xiaohua was slightly stunned. His figure stopped in midair, and he released his divine sense in confusion. He asked, could it be that the heavenly abode River Dragon clan has appeared in Liao River again? However, just as Xiaohua finished speaking, he felt a burst of joy in his heart, as if he had thought of something. That's right. Dragon Vein Xiaohua's voice was also ecstatic. I sensed the aura of the Yuzhou cauldron. How is that possible? Xiaohua's voice was also filled with disbelief. How could the Yuzhou cauldron be in Longevity Town? Nothing is impossible. Dragon Vein Xiaohua said with a smile, fellow Taoist previously fell into the void passage in the West Sea's eye, and then appeared in Liao River. If there wasn't a passage that led directly to the void here, how could fellow Taoist come here? Since there is a passage to the void here, it is naturally possible for the Yuzhou cauldron to be here. Moreover, at that time, I'm afraid that Kong Hongwu had already taken away the other 5 cauldrons, causing the Yuzhou cauldron to lose its effectiveness. That's why fellow Taoist was able to float out from the suppression of the Yuzhou cauldron. But Xiaohua was somewhat hesitant. He turned his head to look in the direction of Longevity Town and said in a low voice, at this time, the Longevity Town's immortal and Buddhist experts are all here, and the sutra seeking extreme bliss hasn't started yet. How could we dare to make a move here? Fellow Taoist misunderstood. Dragon Vein Xiaohua said with a smile, it's impossible for us to make a move now. When the sutra seeking extreme bliss begins, the attention of the hidden immortal continent and the sutra seeking extreme bliss will follow Chuanzong out of Longevity Town. This Longevity Town will naturally be ignored, and it won't be too late for us to make a move then. And that's how it should be. Xiaohua laughed mischievously. Moreover, this time can't be too long. Otherwise, when those Buddhist experts turn their attention back from the sutra seeking extreme bliss and land on the river and tide temple, you and I will no longer have a chance. Fellow Taoist is wise. Dragon Vein Xiaohua flattered. Xiaohua made up his mind, and his figure no longer stayed. Like a meteor, he flew forward for another 1,000 li and rushed into the depths of Liao River. At the bottom of the river, he found a secluded place to hide. After waiting for several tens of days, Xiaohua finally flew out from the bottom of Liao River. When he quietly released a strand of divine sense to explore Longevity Town, it was as he expected. Not only was the incense in the river and tide temple declining, even the entire Longevity Town appeared deserted. It was as he expected. Good. Xiaohua secretly clapped his hands. He knew that it wouldn't be long before this Longevity Town would become a boiling cauldron of voices. Now was the best time to collect the Yuzhou cauldron. Dragon Vein Xiaohua had the experience of collecting the Shuzhou cauldron, so finding the Yuzhou cauldron was not troublesome. He dived into the depths of Liao River and found the Yuzhou cauldron's aura in just a moment. Oh! Fellow Taoist! Dragon Vein Xiaohua was a bit surprised. The aura of this Yuzhou cauldron is slightly different from the other 8 cauldrons. Xiaohua naturally didn't find any trace of the Yuzhou cauldron, nor did he know the difference in its aura. He asked curiously, "What's the difference?" The aura of this Yuzhou cauldron has a kind of indomitable feeling, as if the lifeline of the entire world is pressing on this Yuzhou cauldron. And Yuzhou has always been called the central region. It is the center of the 9 regions, and the Yuzhou cauldron has such an aura. This means that the Yuzhou cauldron is the center of the 9 cauldron great array. It is very likely that it is the earliest cauldron to be set up. Xiaohua understood and explained, "If we have used the 9 regions cauldron before, when we set up the array again, we will also set up this cauldron first." With that, Xiaohua followed Dragon Vein Xiaohua's guidance and entered the ground. After searching for half a cup of tea, Dragon Vein Xiaohua smiled and said, "I have already seen the Yuzhou cauldron. Fellow Taoist, congratulations on gathering the 9 cauldrons." "Haha, thank you for your trouble, fellow Taoist." Xiaohua laughed. "From now on, fellow Taoist can cultivate in peace." Roar! Dragon Vein Xiaohua let out a low roar and flew out from Xiaohua's body. Dragon patterns flashed all over his body and multicolored clouds overflowed. He opened his mouth and a mouthful of dragon breath fell into an inexplicable space. Wang wang. A burst of chime sounds came from the ground not far away, and then the entire earth shook violently. Quick! Soon there will be Buddhist experts coming. Xiaohua saw that the Yuzhou cauldron had such a big movement and hurriedly urged Dragon Vein Xiaohua. Roar! Dragon Vein Xiaohua didn't dare to be negligent. With a hiss, he stretched out his 5 claws and grabbed the Yuzhou cauldron. The dragon qi around his body surged, and a powerful earth qi was emitted. With a boom, he grabbed the Yuzhou cauldron. Then, Xiaohua patted his forehead, and 8 cauldrons gushed out from the 5-colored true qi. A strong aura fell on the Yuzhou cauldron. The Yuzhou cauldron let out a cheerful roar and rushed into the 5-colored true qi. The cauldron became smaller and smaller, and was about to fall into the true qi. Ha! All of a sudden, a loud laughter rang out from not too far away from the Yuzhou cauldron. Xiaohua was within 100 miles of the cauldron, and an overwhelming aura immediately surged out along with the laughter, completely sealing the space. Even the Yuzhou cauldron, which had fallen into the true energy, stopped in midair. Who? Xiaohua was shocked, and his divine sense swept towards the source of the voice like a hammer. Boom! A huge roar came from the distance, and Xiaohua's divine sense was actually easily shattered by the person who came. The impact of this impact overturned the entire earth. Xiaohua. It's really you. A tall Confucian cultivator wearing a green-gray Confucian robe appeared in front of Xiaohua. You were the one who did the thing on Yaotai Mountain. Kong Hongwu was also killed by you. Master calculated everything, but he didn't expect that you, a Taoist cultivator in the late stage of nascent soul, would have so many helpers. You really have too many hidden methods. If not for this old man's interest, how could I have discovered your face after lying in ambush in Longevity Town for more than 10 years? Middle 7th level Essence Energy, Great Master. Sensing his unparalleled confinement power, sensing the bone-piercing clear light in the eyes of the person who came, Xiaohua's heart trembled violently. How could he not know the other party's origin? A Confucian cultivator's great master was between the 6th and 7th level Essence Energy. This Confucian cultivator's great master was clearly at the middle 7th level Essence Energy, and his strength was almost comparable to a low-level sage of literature. Xiaohua really didn't expect that the Immortal Palace would send a great master who was second only to the sage of literature. Roar! Dragon Vein Xiaohua roared, baring his fangs and brandishing his claws as he pounced towards the Confucian cultivator. That Confucian cultivator coldly smiled, and with a wave of his big sleeve, countless inscribed law chains came from the void, and pounced towards Dragon Vein Xiaohua like an even more rampant python. Clang! Just as Dragon Vein Xiaohua was about to be bound by the chains, a dazzling swordlight chopped down. This swordlight was so sharp, and the 5 qi contained within the swordlight was even more so like boiling water, breaking apart this Confucian cultivator's confinement in one blow. Not only that, Xiaohua was shocked. He rubbed his hands together, and a thick crystal light frantically poured into the space between his 5 fingers. Within 100 li of Xiaohua, thunder erupted, and each lightning bolt was stronger than a horned dragon as it pounced towards the great master. Chapter 4061. Facing Xiaohua's lightning, the Confucian cultivator turned a deaf ear to it. With a wave of his sleeve, countless inscription chains appeared and blocked the lightning. Facing Xiaohua's sword qi, the Confucian cultivator was unable to remain calm. 5 Qi's unification. You actually know the 5 Qi's unification. Xiaohua's 5 Qi's unification was naturally not an ordinary 5 Qi's unification. As soon as the Confucian cultivator saw it, he found it strange. His eyes lit up. Could it be, this 9 cauldron is really useful? It was also at the same time that the swordlight split open the shackles. Dragon Vein Xiaohua suddenly turned around and entered Xiaohua's body. At the same time, that true qi that was like a waterfall swept up the 9 cauldrons and entered Xiaohua's body. Xiaohua practically didn't stop at all. Taking advantage of the fact that the spatial shackles were split open by the shocking sword strike, he urged his magic power and activated the Earth Escape technique, turning into a stream of light and disappearing without a trace. Want to leave? How can it be so easy? The Confucian cultivator sneered. He raised his hand and a 3-colored true qi flew out. In an instant, the ground within several hundred miles was frozen. A bone-piercing cold air rushed out from the 3-colored true qi. I-oh! The Confucian cultivator stretched out his hand. His arm turned into a shadow and expanded along with his true qi. However, just as he stretched out his hand, a look of surprise appeared on his face. What kind of Earth Escape technique is this? As he spoke, an awe-inspiring aura gushed out from the void around the scholar. His figure suddenly disappeared, and when he reappeared, he was already in Liao River, 100 miles away. Unfortunately, just a moment before the scholarly cultivator's figure appeared, Xiaohua's figure also created a ray of light in the Liao River and rushed out of the Liao River. This Xiaohua is really remarkable. The Confucian cultivator's face was a little surprised, but he still looked like he had a card up his sleeve. He thought to himself, looking at his strength, I'm afraid he has already reached the upper 6th grade. It's only been a few decades, but his cultivation has advanced so much. Could it be that he was already at the 6th grade when he participated in the Jade Pavilion meeting? Grand Mist Ancestor, oh Grand Mist Ancestor, you've really set up a grand scheme. Xiaohua rushed out of Liao River in a panic. He simply didn't have time to identify the direction. True essence surged all over his body, and lightning appeared under his feet. Immediately, huge waves were set off on Liao River, and Xiaohua's figure turned into a thunderbolt as he rushed out in a certain direction. In just a few breaths of time, a blurry and indistinct human figure similarly flew out from Liao River, and like a strand of multicolored light, it followed behind Xiaohua. At the same time, in the direction of the Longevity Town, in the Jiangchao Temple, dozens of Buddhist consciousnesses were like a gust of wind that swept across the sky and chased after them. Similarly, outside the Jiangchao Temple, there were also several Buddhist consciousnesses that streaked across the sky and chased after them. Those celestial and Buddhist experts who had not left Longevity Town were puzzled. The sutra seeking of nirvana had already begun, why were there still people stirring up trouble here? Xiaohua's figure flew in midair. Lightning flashed out from his dantian from time to time. Along with this lightning, Xiaohua's lightning escape speed continuously increased. And the Confucian cultivator chasing after him started to slow down after using teleportation a few times. But this Confucian cultivator's Buddhist consciousnesses were truly formidable. No matter how Xiaohua escaped, he would always feel a pair of eyes closely staring at him from behind. Seeing the surrounding scenery begin to distort, Xiaohua knew that his lightning element 3 realms had already reached its limit. Then he heard the sound of thunder from the lightning element 3 realms, which was like true heavenly thunder resounding through the sky. This sound of thunder frightened some cultivators that occasionally passed by, causing them to hastily dodge. Seeing this, Xiaohua suddenly felt a trace of unease in his heart. See, not good. This Xiao was careless. That Confucian cultivator is a 7th level essence energy great master. Since he laid an ambush near the Yu province cauldron, how could this Xiao escape so easily? He must be afraid that fighting with this Xiao near Longevity Town would attract the attention of the Longevity Town's Buddhist sect, so he deliberately let this Xiao escape. And even if this Xiao escaped from Liao River, I should have taken advantage of the current and directly flew to the Jiangchao Temple. Even if I can't get the protection of the Jiangchao Temple's Buddhist sect senior monks, I can only make that Confucian cultivator hesitate to attack me. Xiaohua understood at this time, but it was too late. That Confucian cultivator's strength was much higher than his. He had already sealed the area behind him, so how could he be allowed to turn around again? Xiaohua's current plan was to run as far as he could and see if he could shake off the Confucian cultivator in the end. Wang wang wang. When Xiaohua's lightning escape reached the 3rd day, seeing that the distorted space had already reached the point of tearing, suddenly Xiaohua's body began to give birth to a powerful tearing force. This tearing force was like thousands of small hands grabbing Xiaohua's body at the same time, wanting to tear his body apart. At the same time, the sound of thunder resounding through the sky began to sharpen, and the surrounding lightning began to flicker crazily. This guy, what kind of trick does he have? The Confucian cultivator chasing behind Xiaohua was a bit embarrassed. At first, he wanted to chase Xiaohua to a place where no one else would go because he was afraid of the Jiangchao Temple's Buddhist sect. But in the end, Xiaohua's true essence was abundant. Although he didn't use the Dao sect's instant shift to escape, his flying speed was far beyond that of ordinary cultivators. As a 7th level essence energy martial grandmaster, he actually couldn't catch up, and even showed signs of chasing further and further away. Now, seeing the crazy lightning around Xiaohua's body, he felt that something was wrong. Seeing that the lightning around Xiaohua's body was different, how could he dare to be negligent? He patted his own head. Wang wang wang. With a clear sound, three-colored true essence fell into the sky, triggering the noble qi within 1,000 miles. The entire sky suddenly began to freeze, and thumb-sized ice fragments appeared in the air. Within this ice, everything began to quiet down, and the sound of thunder also began to subside. Seeing that his lightning escape was on the verge of advancing, but was stopped by this Confucian cultivator, Xiaohua narrowed his eyes and coldly said, "Domain power. Good, let's see how this Xiao will break your domain." As he spoke, he rubbed his hands together, and thumb-sized runes fell into the void. A strange fluctuation spread out from Xiaohua's body. Wherever the fluctuation went, most of the ice fragments were shattered. Although the Confucian cultivator urged his true qi to repair the domain, the large expanse of ice seemed to have seen the sun and melted one after another. Dao Sex Xiaohua, you're really powerful. The Confucian cultivator exclaimed in admiration and opened his mouth. Boom! A light blue glow gushed out, and a simple halberd engraved with inscriptions fell into the void. Heavy noble qi pillars fused into the halberd without the Confucian cultivator's urging. The corner of Xiaohua's mouth slightly twitched, and he hurriedly urged his body to dodge to the side. But at this time, the domain that was previously shattered by the lightning suddenly became much harder, and with a ka sound, it blocked Xiaohua's body. Xiaohua didn't have time to urge the lightning, and a fierce wind was born from the void, piercing towards Xiaohua's heart. Xiaohua hurriedly waved his fist, and with a boom, it landed in the air, and the powerful impact produced an ear-piercing roar. In the void, a long halberd phantom condensed from thousands of noble qi was shattered by Xiaohua's punch. Not good. Xiaohua shattered the illusion, but he didn't show the slightest bit of complacency. Instead, he revealed a dignified expression. Sure enough, along with the chaotic noble qi, tiny vortexes were formed. Ka. The original body of the simple and unadorned halberd strangely revealed a malevolent expression in front of Xiaohua. Xiaohua hastily dodged the halberd, but the seemingly pointless halberd pierced into his shoulder. The halberd fell, and a bone-piercing chill appeared. Inscriptions that looked like tiny ice fragments swarmed into Xiaohua's body, and a sharp qi that could pierce through mountains madly pounced on him. Wang wang. Xiaohua's Taoist golden light was defeated by this sharp qi, but at the same time the golden light dissipated, a bronze brilliance suddenly appeared, and within this bronze brilliance, there was even a wisp of silvery white. This brilliance was so solid that the thousands of inscriptions on the armor seemed to have crashed into a wall and shattered. In particular, although the simple halberd had pierced Xiaohua's body several times, the cracks were quickly mended within the brilliance, and in a few breaths of time, they were completely healed. The Confucian martial grandmaster was flabbergasted. He looked on in disbelief and whispered, "Demon. Demon body. Hee hee." Xiaohua laughed nastily. He suddenly raised his arm, and his elbow slammed down on the halberd below him. Kacha! Layers of cracks appeared on the surface of the simple halberd, and the entire halberd trembled rapidly, emitting a mournful cry. Damn it! How is this possible? How can he reach such a realm with just his body? Even if it's a demon body, it's still not enough. The expression of the scholar cultivator changed slightly. He was very clear about the power of his imperial implement. Seeing that Xiaohua was able to defeat his imperial implement with just his physical body, then how could Xiaohua's physical body be just the demon body that he had measured? It was even more powerful than the magic treasures of Taoist cultivators, right? The Confucian martial grandmaster recovered from his shock and hurriedly withdrew the halberd. His body once again emitted a faint buzzing sound, and the domain around Xiaohua condensed again. No, this won't do. Xiaohua frowned as he pondered. He urged the lightning to protect the area around him. Within a dozen li lightning flashed in this area, and all the ice that invaded the area was destroyed by the lightning. Although this Confucian martial grandmaster's domain is low level, it's still not something that I can resist. I might be able to protect myself from being controlled by him, but in the end, I can't escape. In the end, I'll still be trapped to death by him. While Xiaohua was pondering, the Confucian martial grandmaster moved again. His body suddenly expanded, and a pillar of vast qi gushed out from the nearby space like a volcanic eruption. Moreover, the three-colored true energy that he urged before also formed three different colored sub-bodies around Xiaohua. Each sub-body showed a fierce power, and firmly covered the sky within 1,000 li. Seeing the power of ice in the entire space rise again, the Confucian martial grandmaster slightly narrowed his eyes. He gently waved his left hand, and a light blue cold light disappeared into the air along with his true energy. At the same time, the three sub-bodies roared in unison. A pillar of vast qi once again condensed in the void and fell into the sub-bodies. For a moment, the vast power raged. Chapter 4062. Man has law, and heaven and earth are just. One of the sub-bodies chanted loudly. These words fell in the air and shattered one after another. Waves of awe-inspiring energy rushed into these broken words and turned into inscriptions. The inscriptions were recast one after another in this domain. In just a few breaths, a thick chain of inscriptions gradually formed. As soon as this chain of inscriptions appeared, the solemn and awe-inspiring laws appeared, completely sealing off the area within 1,000 miles. Even Xiaohua's heart was straightened. Man has the law, and evil spirits must be repelled. Immediately after, the second body chanted again. These words formed another thick chain of inscriptions in the air, echoing with the one in front of him, forcing Xiaohua to the point where it was difficult to even breathe. Man has law, and the people obey. The third sub-body spoke. This time, the awe-inspiring energy was even more than before. The lightning near Xiaohua was forced to shrink by half. Finally, the Confucian cultivator spoke. Man has law, and all things fall. With the appearance of the last engraved law chain, the entire sky of 1,000 miles was completely enveloped. The four chains pounced towards Xiaohua from all directions. The engraved law chain was like the soul of the entire domain, causing Xiaohua to be unable to break free. Even the lightning was suppressed to within 10 feet of Xiaohua. You are the inspector of the immortal palace. Xiaohua's face was pale. He stared at the somewhat familiar chains and said word by word, what law and rules did I break that actually forced the great grandmaster of the immortal palace to take action? He. The Confucian cultivator saw that the area within 1,000 miles was like an iron wall. The void was filled with awe-inspiring energy and he couldn't help but sneer. You are the leader of the thieves, leading the remnants of the Taoist sect to rebel. You even destroyed the destiny of the 9 regions and stole my hidden immortal 9 cauldrons. For such a great crime, I, a Confucian cultivator, can kill you. Ha! Xiaohua laughed. His eyes were full of ridicule as he looked at the falling chains and said, who is the thief who stole the country? Who is the thief who stole the cauldrons? I'm afraid no one knows better than you, right? You use the law and the essence of rules to do petty things. With such an illegitimate reputation, how can you trap me? A trace of disdain flashed in the eyes of the Confucian cultivator. He urged the true energy in his body and scolded, I want to be the law, I want to be the rules. You are an uninitiated Taoist sect, how can you understand the meaning of my Confucian cultivator? Die. Hum. The 4 chains of inscription were like horned dragons. They had already trapped Xiaohua in an area of several tens of zhang around him, entangling each other as they fell down. Xiaohua raised his head and laughed. Such a self-righteous world, how can it be the world? How could such an unscrupulous sun and moon be the sun and moon that the people wanted? Since that's the case, then let this Xiao change the world for the people. Caw 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 caw. With a wave of Xiaohua's left hand, a golden light mixed with a faint awe-inspiring aura flew out. That golden light soared into the sky and turned into a golden dragon. The golden dragon, like Xiaohua's unwavering determination, split the impregnable law into two halves. Then, the golden dragon roared and pounced on the four chains. Those tens of thousands of inscriptions were almost simultaneously covered by the golden light. In this golden light, they first frantically counterattacked, then the golden light pierced the inscriptions. These inscriptions were like tadpoles, and almost at the same time, all the inscriptions were split from the middle and split into two halves. Looking at the chain that was pretending to be a sheep's head but selling dog meat, it was actually split neatly into two by the ice-breaking intent. Spiritual object. When the Confucian cultivator saw the power of the soaring dragon scissors, he couldn't help but groan. At the same time, greed appeared in his eyes, and he urged the true qi in his body again. However, before he could make a move, he saw Xiaohua raise his right hand. A sword gourd flashed, and a green and red jade appeared in the air. Quick! Xiaohua urged his true qi, and a spell appeared in his hand. On the sword gourd, a white light with a nose and eyes appeared. Not good. Seeing that his mind was blurred, the Confucian cultivator was shocked. Wang. Then, two almost colorless spirit execution yuan light soared into the sky from the sword gourd and fell on the Confucian cultivator's head faster than lightning. The Confucian cultivator's figure immediately became sluggish, and the chilling aura within 1,000 miles also disappeared like a receding tide. Hee. Xiaohua sneered, but the spirit execution yuan light slightly intertwined, and a thin, invisible blood mark appeared on the Confucian cultivator's neck. Puff! The Confucian cultivator's head fell, and true qi rushed out of his neck. Xiaohua looked at a lot of blood rushing out, and he couldn't help but stare blankly. At this moment, boom! Xiaohua's back suddenly emitted the sound of a mountain flood exploding, and a thin stream of water fell on Xiaohua's body at lightning speed. Damn! Although the stream of water was small, fear appeared on Xiaohua's face, and he hurriedly dodged. Boom! He only dodged a few inches, and the stream of water rushed into his body. Xiaohua's demon body, which had been tempered for a long time, emitted a pa sound in the stream of water, and a bloody hole several feet in size appeared under Xiaohua's right armpit. This bloody hole not only penetrated the right side of Xiaohua's body, but it also exploded into pieces, too horrible to look at. Immortal Palace's imperial equipment. The stream of water finally condensed into a diamond-shaped imperial equipment, and there was a glaring, imperial character on the imperial equipment. Xiaohua couldn't help but exclaim in horror. Ha! The Confucian cultivator's complacent smile came out from his other body, and he looked at Xiaohua's pale face and said, "What's the use of a strong demon body? It's not like my Immortal Palace's imperial equipment hasn't killed demons." Ouch, this is the imperial star stab. Just as the Confucian cultivator opened his mouth, an awe-inspiring aura also came out from his body, and it pounced on him with the force of 10,000 catties. It was the depressing divine stab that Xiaohua released earlier. This depressing divine stab was the Immortal Palace's imperial star stab, and it was extremely hidden in the Confucian cultivator's awe-inspiring aura. The Confucian cultivator's primordial spirit was already proud after teleporting to his body, and now he was caught off guard. Moreover, that body was condensed from the 5 Qi's unifications of true Qi, and it was hit by the imperial star stab, and it collapsed extremely quickly. Damn it! The Confucian cultivator's voice came out from another body. However, just as this voice came out, the lightning around Xiao Hua's body flourished. Rumble. In the sound of thunder, Xiao Hua's body once again turned into lightning. The Confucian cultivator's body was defeated, and the head of his main body was also chopped off. The sealed domain on all sides had already collapsed by half, and under Xiao Hua's lightning attack, it collapsed even more. However, this wasn't the end of it. What made the Confucian martial grandmaster's mind crumble was that a beam of light several zhang wide suddenly appeared in front of Xiao Hua. The domain that was already falling apart suddenly opened up a passage. The Confucian martial grandmaster simply couldn't see where the beam of light came from. Xiao Hua had already turned into a bolt of lightning and streaked across the sky, instantly escaping from this domain. Damn it, this guy really has a lot of tricks up his sleeve. Especially that instant feat technique, it's simply a 7th grade elemental energy. No, it's simply an 8th grade elemental energy, upper rank. The Confucian cultivator cursed inwardly. That body hurriedly swayed and fell back into his main body, and the head that fell off also grew out again. His entire body rapidly shrank, and at the same time, his figure also turned into a multicolored light and chased after Xiao Hua. However, at this time, the Confucian cultivator's flying speed was already a bit weaker than before. Looking at Xiao Hua again, he was even more confident than before, and showed signs of increasing his speed again. Damn it! After chasing for a few more days, although the Confucian cultivator didn't catch up to Xiao Hua, he didn't lose him either. When he saw Xiao Hua's speed increase again, he secretly shouted in his heart, and at the same time, he took out an imperial tool from his bosom. This imperial tool was a triangular square box, and the box's exterior was roaming with multicolored clouds. The Confucian cultivator hurriedly said a few words to this box, and then turned the square box. On the square box's triangular edges, various scenes frequently appeared, and then the square box's triangular edges emitted an unpleasant rhythm, and a black shadow covered the square box. This old man wants to see where you can escape to. After the Confucian cultivator cast his technique, an indescribable sneer appeared on his face, and he put the square box into his bosom. It was also at this time, woo. A strange sound came from afar, and 2 transparent spirit execution yuan rays rose up again. The Confucian cultivator's complexion changed, and his figure slightly stagnated. He raised his hand and patted his forehead, and 3-colored true qi surged out, transforming into a water cherry blossom above his head. Ha! Xiao Hua's mocking laughter came, and the spirit execution yuan rays that soared into the sky suddenly disappeared. It turned out that all of this was just Xiao Hua's illusion technique. The Confucian cultivator flew into a rage. He had already chased for more than 10 days, and aside from using his domain to trap Xiao Hua at the beginning, Xiao Hua's figure had always been drifting around the edge of his domain. Whenever the Confucian cultivator teleported, Xiao Hua would also teleport, and whenever the Confucian cultivator tried to use a secret technique to get closer, Xiao Hua would change direction like a fish. In front of Xiao Hua's rich escape experience and peerless escape technique, the roles of the two seemed to have changed. This Confucian cultivator was just a small cultivator of 5th grade essence energy. And this time, Xiao Hua's feint increased the distance between the two again. This place seems to be the Qilan's training ground. Just as Xiao Hua was desperately trying to escape, a slightly familiar scene appeared in front of Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua almost didn't hesitate, and his figure suddenly rushed into the sky, flying straight towards the location of the earth, fire, wind, and lightning. Even though Xiao Hua was escaping with ease, his heart was also clenched. The other party was a 7th level essence energy martial grandmaster, who was already on the verge of becoming a literary saint. In the previous battle in the high-altitude domain, Xiao Hua had used up all his means and barely managed to escape. The strength of this opponent was the same as Ao Jian on the dragon boat. They had already begun to comprehend domains, and Xiao Hua's every move was within their control. If it wasn't for unexpected methods, it would be very difficult for him to survive. Especially, from this cultivator's mouth, Xiao Hua knew that this cultivator already knew everything about Yaotai Mountain, and also knew that he had 9 cauldrons in his hands. Xiao Hua even knew that this cultivator actually had a master behind him. In other words, if Xiao Hua didn't kill this cultivator this time, he would be noticed by this so-called master, and it would be very difficult for him to find peace in the future, even if Xiao Hua was now the Dragon Master of Dragon Island in name. Chapter 4063. However, as soon as Xiao Hua thought about how he had to kill a Confucian cultivator whose strength was close to that of the sage of literature, he felt bitter. The heavens were playing a big joke on him. In the folded Jadeite legacy realm, the after effects of using the demonic saber had yet to be eliminated, and he had to face such a strong opponent again. Xiao Hua really didn't know whether the heavens wanted to kill him or the Confucian cultivator following closely behind him. Seeing the astral winds and layers of earth, fire, wind, and lightning appearing in front of him, Xiao Hua smiled bitterly again. Although the previous scene looked familiar, he couldn't be sure. However, seeing the earth, fire, wind, and lightning, Xiao Hua could tell that this place was definitely not the Qilin's training ground. However, seeing the earth fire surging and the wind and lightning whistling, Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes and slowly calculated. Although Xiao Hua was calculating, his figure didn't stop, and he pounced on the astral winds like lightning. In the distance, the Confucian cultivator was somewhat bewildered. How could the earth, fire, wind, and lightning be a place where ordinary cultivators could come? Even if he was a patrol envoy, he absolutely wouldn't stroll around here in his free time. Of course, not strolling wasn't unexpected or fearful. The Confucian cultivator's figure was like the wind, and he still chased after him without hesitation. Xiao Hua entered the earth, fire, wind, and lightning, and the wind and lightning blew all over his body, causing his skin to hurt. Obviously, the astral winds here were much stronger than the ones he encountered before. Xiao Hua's body flashed with a bronze brilliance. In the brilliance, the lightning on his body resisted the wind and lightning, and he rushed through a passage in the earth, fire, wind, and lightning, gradually going deeper and deeper. Looking at the Confucian cultivator behind Xiao Hua, at this moment, a treasured armor appeared around his body. The treasured armor was resplendent, and it easily blocked the astral winds outside the brilliance. There was simply no need to consume the Confucian cultivator's true qi. Damn it! Xiao Hua also paid attention to his back, and he was even more helpless. There were countless treasures in the immortal palace, and having a treasured armor to resist the earth, fire, wind, and lightning was really nothing. While Xiao Hua was secretly cursing, he opened his delirium eyes, and tried his best to find traces of space in the wind and lightning. However, after flying for half an hour, he saw bursts of thunder and lightning, and the astral winds became even more violent. Even with Xiao Hua's strong physical body, there were some signs that he couldn't bear it, and the promised space crack still didn't appear. Xiao Hua didn't hesitate to turn around and fly in another direction. The earth, fire, wind, and lightning were boundless, and there was no direction to speak of. This guy seems to have been looking for something for a long time. The Confucian cultivator, who was chasing after Xiao Hua, saw Xiao Hua turn around and secretly pondered, could it be that in this earth, fire, wind, and thunder, there is still an ambush for him? In view of Xiao Hua's previous cunning, the Confucian cultivator couldn't help but become cautious. He once again urged his righteous qi to protect himself before he dared to chase after Xiao Hua. At this time, the Confucian cultivator had already regarded Xiao Hua as an equal opponent. He did not feel the slightest bit ashamed of being careful. Gotcha. In the distance, there were some strange movements in the wind and thunder, setting off a thunderstorm in the range of 100 miles. When the thunderstorm gradually calmed down, Xiaohua's figure actually disappeared within the thunderstorm. Ah! How is that possible? The Confucian cultivator was shocked. He was very clear about the power of the earth, fire, wind, and thunder. He couldn't even use teleportation, so how could Xiaohua disappear into thin air? Ambush! This was the Confucian cultivator's first thought. However, even after activating the eye-cleansing technique for a moment, he still couldn't find any clues. He had no choice but to charge into the thunderstorm. In the thunderstorm, the astral winds were even more devastating. Countless thunderbolts madly surged in one direction. When the Confucian cultivator's eye-cleansing technique fell into the astral winds, a thoughtful expression appeared in his eyes. The Confucian cultivator didn't dare to be negligent. He patted his forehead, and a strand of hair-like tricolored crystal flew out from between his eyebrows. It split into two parts in midair and fell towards the Confucian cultivator's nose. Shwa! The crystal entered his body, and his eyes, which were originally overflowing with clear qi, suddenly shone brightly. In the center of his two pupils, light spots like water cherry blossoms appeared. These light spots turned into a net that quickly covered his entire eyes. See, there's actually a spatial crack here. The Confucian cultivator, who had activated his secret technique, saw the spatial crack in the wind and thunder at a glance. He couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. How did he know? Could it be that he has more divine abilities? No. Even if this old man has another helper, I'm afraid it won't be easy to deal with him. The Confucian cultivator clenched his teeth, and a ferocious expression appeared on his face. Even if this old man's reputation is ruined, this time I absolutely can't let him escape from this old man's hands. After saying that, the Confucian cultivator didn't rush into the spatial crack. Instead, he took out the triangular imperial equipment again. After activating it, the imperial equipment turned into the shape of an immortal bird and rushed into the earth, fire, wind, and thunder, disappearing in a moment. Watching the imperial equipment fly away, the Confucian cultivator narrowed his eyes. With a wave of his hand, an immortal palace imperial equipment similar to the imperial shield appeared in his hand. He coldly said, Xiaohua, this old man wants to see how you're going to escape in the face of 3 great grandmasters who are about to step into the sage of literature. After saying that, the Confucian cultivator's entire body suddenly flattened, twisting in the wind and thunder for a moment before rushing into the spatial crack. Rumble! A violent explosion came from the spatial crack. Although it was 2 different spaces, the explosion was really powerful, causing the wind and thunder near the spatial crack to sway. Then, the Confucian cultivator, who had previously calmly escaped into the spatial crack, once again escaped from the spatial crack. The brilliance on the treasure armor had dimmed a lot, the Confucian robe on his body was also tattered, and traces of flames were still burning on the righteous qi around his body. Boom! The huge righteous qi around the Confucian cultivator extinguished the remaining flames. His previously calm face was now somewhat distorted. Xiaohua. You really deserve to die. What kind of talisman is this, to have such great power in the void? Then, the Confucian cultivator flew into the spatial crack again. The void inside the spatial crack was not particularly spacious, and the fire wave produced by the explosion of the fire talisman had just been extinguished. The Confucian cultivator's eyes flashed with brilliance, and he unhesitatingly chased after the only passage in the void. Xiaohua, who was fiercely flying in front of him, was also helpless at this time. He also did not expect that the passage in the spatial crack would be so narrow that it would not be effective in avoiding the Confucian cultivator. The only thing he could do was to arrange more hidden attacks in the spatial crack, hoping to injure the Confucian cultivator. Rumble. From time to time, the sound of explosions would come from behind him. Xiaohua's lips curled into a smile. He naturally knew that the first fire talisman could injure the Confucian cultivator by surprise, but the later fire talismans could only play the role of blocking for a moment. Therefore, Xiaohua urged his body to quickly shuttle through the passage. Seeing that he was getting farther and farther away from the Confucian cultivator, Xiaohua was slightly proud in his heart. Once he left the spatial crack, Xiaohua would either set up an ambush to kill the Confucian cultivator, or hide his body to hide. Xiaohua was confident that his plan would succeed. But at this time, Xiaohua's heart trembled for no reason. Not good. Xiaohua was shocked. He finally understood what the palpitations he had encountered before were. The Confucian cultivator behind him might not be able to do anything to him, but this Confucian cultivator was not alone. The Confucian cultivator's help had already appeared. Moreover, from his trembling perception, the other Confucian cultivator should be coming from the other side of the spatial crack. Although Xiaohua did not know how the Confucian cultivator had found his whereabouts, Xiaohua knew that this should be the biggest crisis he had ever encountered. Xiaohua hurriedly urged his true essence to fly forward amidst the rumbling thunder. Xiaohua still had not thought of any countermeasures. What he needed to do was to quickly fly out of the spatial crack and not be blocked by the Confucian cultivator. In the time it took to smoke half a cigarette, Xiaohua's eyes suddenly lit up, and a rather large space appeared in front of him. Xiaohua was overjoyed and immediately rushed into it. However, as soon as he entered the space, he saw a three-colored haze on the other side of the space in the distance, like the rising of dawn, rapidly spreading in his direction. Damn it! How could Xiaohua still be able to calmly identify the direction? He slightly turned his head and rushed in another direction. At the same time that Xiaohua discovered the Confucian cultivator, the other party also discovered him. The Confucian cultivator also urged his true essence to surround Xiaohua. Xiaohua had already seen clearly that the Confucian cultivator had a simple face, a tall crown on his head, a thin figure, and wore the same armor as the Confucian cultivator behind him. Woo-woo. The Confucian cultivator flew for a moment, then his body suddenly emitted a similar rumbling sound. A three-colored true essence gushed out from the surface of his body. First, his figure blurred, then turned into a stream of light, and his speed suddenly increased by several times. Then, the true essence of the Confucian cultivator attacked Xiaohua like a tide. The true essence was like a flying sword, tearing Xiaohua to pieces. Xiaohua saw that he could not avoid it, and patted his own head. Boom! True essence gushed out, and the Confucian cultivator Xiaohua rushed out of the spatial crack with a sword in his hand. At the same time, the green-robed Xiaohua controlled his nascent soul and landed on the other side of the Confucian cultivator Xiaohua. As for Xiaohua himself, he held the sword gourd in his hand and coldly looked at the Confucian cultivator. Humph! The thin Confucian cultivator coldly snorted, and the thousands of true essences suddenly condensed into real swords that rushed towards Xiaohua. It was even more powerful than the 10,000 swords returned to origin that Xiaohua used before. Unfortunately, the current Xiaohua was no longer an ignorant person. The green-robed Xiaohua rubbed his hands together, and the lightning was even more rampant than the sword light. It was born in the spatial crack, and not only did it counter the sword light, it also destroyed the thin Confucian cultivator's true essence. How can the spatial crack produce such a strong lightning? The thin Confucian cultivator was slightly startled, and the true essence in his body once again gushed out, and the flying sword became even brighter in the lightning. Kang! The Confucian cultivator Xiaohua raised his sword, and the sword light was even more dazzling than the lightning. The sword intent was even more soul-stealing than the thousands of sword intents, and it seemed as if half of the spatial crack was going to be pierced through by the Confucian cultivator Xiaohua's sword. The entire sword light fell on the thin Confucian cultivator's head. How is this possible? The thin Confucian cultivator was greatly shocked. 3 colored true essences rushed out of his head, and condensed into a silver pineapple flower. This silver pineapple flower was sparkling and translucent, and its entire body was silver white. Boom! The sword light fell, and the silver pineapple flower trembled slightly, and layers upon layers of strong fluctuations rippled in the spatial crack. Watch this old man. The thin Confucian cultivator was suppressed by Xiaohua as soon as they met face to face, and he was somewhat angry from embarrassment. The silver pineapple flower suddenly bloomed in the air, and turned into a huge sword that was several zhang long, and chopped towards the Confucian cultivator Xiaohua. At the same time, the thin Confucian cultivator slightly raised his hand, and the spatial crack began to boil, and strands of sword light sealed Xiaohua's surroundings. Chapter 4064. Whoosh! White light gushed out from the sword gourd, and the skinny Confucian cultivator's gaze suddenly became sluggish. Of course, in just a few breaths, an angry roar came from the Confucian cultivator's body. You dare! Just as the Confucian cultivator's gaze regained its clarity, and before he could do anything, 2 rays of soul execution yuan light pierced through the air and landed on his head. Damn it! Seeing the soul execution yuan light so powerful, the Confucian cultivator was somewhat frightened. He raised his fist and patted his chest. Swish! The Confucian cultivator opened his mouth, and a fist-sized sword splendor spurted out, meeting the soul execution yuan light head-on. Caw caw caw! The sound of metal clashing rang out, and Xiaohua's soul execution yuan light was unexpectedly beaten back by this sword splendor. Not only that, the silver spinach that previously turned into a huge sword suddenly turned into an inch-long small sword and attacked Xiaohua between his eyebrows. This small sword was different from the soul execution yuan light. It was formless and intangible, and space and distance did not seem to exist. In a split second, it had already pierced between Xiaohua's eyebrows. Boom! Xiaohua hurriedly urged his soul strands, but just as they came out, they were completely shattered by this small sword. Like a huge hammer, Xiaohua's mind buzzed, and stars appeared in front of his eyes. At this moment, misfortune never comes alone. The huge sword still fell, and the Confucian cultivator Xiaohua's body was distorted. Waves of true qi burst out from Xiaohua's body, and soon Xiaohua was deflated. Damn it! Xiaohua urged God's guidance to stabilize his dizzy head, and secretly cursed in his heart, I have many methods, but these methods can barely resist a Confucian cultivator at the 7th level of origin energy. And although these Confucian cultivators at the 7th level of origin energy don't have many methods, if one of these methods were to land on me, I wouldn't be able to withstand it. Previously, the Imperial Star Stab was like this, and now, this Soul Sword attack is also like this. Thinking of the Imperial Star Stab, Xiaohua became vigilant again. His figure suddenly turned into wind, and his hands waved, and lightning-like swords slashed horizontally into the air. Boom! Another loud sound, and a thick chain was struck by lightning. On the chain, sword splendor like light, if it trapped Xiaohua, it would be very troublesome. Daoist Master Xiao really has another method. No wonder Sun Qing wanted this old man to come and help. When the Confucian cultivator saw that his secret move had been seen through by Xiaohua again, he couldn't help chuckling. Originally, this old master thought it was unnecessary, but now it seems that this old master really has to take action. Xiaohua looked into the void and saw that the spirit-slaying vital light had been defeated by the Confucian cultivator's sword light. The Confucian cultivator Xiao Hua had also been defeated by the Confucian cultivator's 5 cheese unifications. However, the green-robe Xiao Hua's thunderbolt technique was still effective, temporarily preventing the entire space from being sealed by the Confucian cultivator. Xiao Hua's divine sense condensed in midair. His delirium eyes were already closed, and his naked eyes were swiftly sweeping through the pitch-black void. Both of you are great grandmasters who are about to break through the spirit returning to emptiness realm. I'm afraid it won't be long before you advance to the void refinement realm. At that time, the sage of literature will be at your fingertips. Seniors, why do you have to make things difficult for me? Xiao Hua said faintly. If this matter spreads out, where will the immortal palace's face go? Hee hee. The Confucian cultivator glanced at the struggling Xiao Hua on top of his head, and a thought-provoking smile appeared on his face. The sage of literature is within reach, but the star of literature is not. If not for a special opportunity, I'm afraid this old man can only stay in the sage of literature realm for a lifetime. But this old man heard that Daoist Xiao has the aura of 9 cauldrons. If an ordinary Confucian cultivator wants to enter the star of literature, 1 cauldron is enough. Why doesn't Daoist Xiao give 1 cauldron to this old man? People often say that a word is worth 9 cauldrons. Xiao Hua smiled coldly. When Confucian cultivators temper their incantations, 1 word is worth 9 cauldrons. 1 word is enough to become a star of literature. Senior neglects the essentials and focuses on the trifles. I'm afraid you've already lost your heart. How can you set foot on the star of literature? Ha ha ha, boy, I didn't expect you to have a thorough understanding of the Confucian scriptures. The Confucian cultivator laughed loudly. Unfortunately, since there's a shortcut in front of me, why should this old man take the difficult path? There's a path on the mountain of books, and there's a path on the mountain of books. There's no end to the sea of learning. Xiao Hua sighed. You're a great grandmaster of Confucian cultivation, but you don't even understand such a simple principle? The Confucian cultivator tilted his head and said with a smile, that's just a song to deceive children. You really believe it? This old man actually has something that I don't understand. Do you think you can persuade this old man with your glib tongue? Xiao Hua naturally didn't have such a childish plan. He was only taking advantage of his breath to find an escape route with his extraordinary spatial sense. Unfortunately, even this last hope of his was snuffed out by the Confucian cultivator. Just as the Confucian cultivator finished speaking, in the distant space, another 3-colored haze filled the air and rushed over. A small voice faintly came from the void. Sun Hao, this guy is too cunning. Don't talk to him. Did you bring your burning heaven furnace? Of course. Hearing this, the great grandmaster of Confucian cultivation, Sun Hao, raised his hand and clapped. A lid-like imperial equipment flew out. This imperial equipment was very simple and unadorned. There were only 3 fist-sized inscriptions, and Xiao Hua actually couldn't recognize these 3 inscriptions. Sun Qing, this old man knew what you meant when I saw your message. Sun Hao said with a smile. Can't you see that this old man is trying to persuade Daoist Xiao to stay and wait for your earth-casting furnace? Good. Seeing the burning heaven furnace fly out, a smile appeared on Sun Chang's face. This guy's body is comparable to a great demon. Without the burning heaven casting earth casting technique, it's hard to completely kill him. In this void. Sun Hao looked around with a somewhat awkward expression. Without waiting for Sun Qing to speak, how could Xiao Hua, who saw that things weren't going well, dare to stay any longer? Although he had just seen a glimmer of life with his naked eyes, he still couldn't be sure. His body flashed with lightning again. The soul-punishing vital light and the Confucian cultivator Xiaohua all entered his body and fled towards the distant pitch-black darkness. Ha! At this time, where do you think you're going? Sun Qing laughed loudly. He raised his hand and clapped. Strands of cold air flew out from the earth-casting furnace, instantly enveloping the entire void. Xiaohua's lightning-like figure suddenly slowed down in this cold air. Sun Hao also clapped his hand. The burning heaven furnace above his head also flashed with silver light, intertwining with the cold air and enveloping the void. As soon as this gold qi and water qi intertwined, the entire void shook, as if it was about to collapse. Xiaohua's originally slow figure was now crawling like a tortoise. Damn it! Xiaohua cursed. Even his voice had been imprisoned, dragged out to an extreme length. Xiaohua originally wanted to ambush and kill Sun Qing in the void, but he didn't expect Sun Hao to arrive. Now that the two of them had joined forces, he was afraid that the one to be killed would be him. The void was filled with a silver brilliance and a light blue cold light. The two brilliances intertwined, not only creating a strong fluctuation that shook the void, but silver-blue flames that looked like withered flowers were born one after another. These flames that filled the void didn't have any heat. Instead, they made people feel cold. However, these bone-chilling flames also had an inconceivable might. Xiaohua's body, which had been tempered by the blood of the demon god, felt his muscles go numb the moment he touched these icy flames. Even the bronze color on the surface of his body began to melt, like a candle under the flames. Burning heaven casting earth technique. Xiaohua chanted silently. He raised his head and looked up. At this moment, the burning heaven furnace had already become several hundred zhang in size and descended with a rumbling sound. Looking at the bottom of his feet, the earth-casting furnace had also become several hundred zhang in size and rushed up with a loud rumble. Sun Qing and Sun Hao saw that Xiaohua had already fallen into their trap. With a smile on their faces, they activated their subsidiary bodies. The two subsidiary bodies each spouted three-colored true qi onto the two imperial treasures. The two imperial treasures were already so powerful when they weren't combined. If they were truly combined, how could Xiaohua survive? Moreover, now that the two great experts had joined forces to seal the void, it would be difficult for Xiaohua to escape. In fact, there was no need to seal the imperial treasures. Xiaohua already had no chance of survival. Now that things have come to this, don't even think about killing the enemy. Xiaohua sighed. Let's escape from this void first. Xiaohua had been holding back because he didn't want to expose his killing move. At this moment, he actually had no other choice. A-oh. Xiaohua patted his head. Dragon Vein Xiaohua let out a roar and rushed into the void. 5. Five-clawed true dragon. Sun Hao was shocked. He looked at Sun Qing with some disbelief. Sun Chang's face also showed surprise. Sun Hao shouted, Sun Qing, how could he have the true dragon vein? Moreover, it's so pure. Sun Chang's eyes showed a trace of gloominess. He said indifferently, at this moment, regardless of whether he has the true dragon vein or not, even if he is the descendant of a true dragon, can you still stop? Sun Hao, we will kill Xiaohua. This true dragon vein, you and I will split it equally. Sun Hao slightly hesitated, then firmly nodded and said, okay. Sun Qing naturally saw Xiaohua's five-clawed true dragon vein long ago. However, he had selfish motives and didn't explain it to Sun Hao. The two masters both understood what the true dragon vein meant to Confucian masters. This true dragon vein's function was even more important than the 9 cauldrons in a certain aspect. However, there were always times when things went beyond one's expectations. Sun Hao had just nodded his head when a burst of inexplicable and obscure draconic language came out from Dragon Vein Xiaohua's mouth. Then, along with the draconic heavenly technique, draconic patterns appeared in the entire void. The draconic patterns rushed into the tens of millions of ice flames. Although they couldn't completely obliterate the ice flames, the powerful confinement force had already been reduced by 70%. Heavenly Dragon Language Technique. Impossible. Sun Cheng and Sun Hao both turned pale with fright. Their mouths were opened so wide that walnuts could be stuffed in. They were immortal palaces patrolling envoys. How could they not know what Heavenly Dragon Language Technique meant? This is not a bloodline true dragon vein technique. Sun Cheng saw the opportunity quickly. His face showed incomparable ecstasy again. He shouted madly, "This is a real five-clawed true dragon. A real five-clawed true dragon, ah!" That was something from Legends. Even on Dragon Island, it hadn't been seen for a long time. Greed appeared in Sun Cheng and Sun Hao's eyes again. Woo! It was also at this moment, when the two masters were preparing to use all of their abilities to capture the five-clawed true dragon, Xiaohua spat out a wisp of dual-colored spirit fire from his mouth. Moreover, the dragon vein technique Xiaohua waved its body and rushed out of the void while carrying Xiaohua. Chapter 4065. Under the gazes of the two great grandmasters, wherever the spiritual fire went, it just happened to sweep away the remaining ice flames. Following the flight of dragon vein Xiaohua, it instantly rushed out a winding passage. This Xiaohua is really an unkillable cockroach. The two grandmasters looked at each other helplessly. Their hearts were filled with the same bitterness. Even the burning heaven casting earth technique was unable to trap Xiaohua. The two of them really didn't know what method to use to kill Xiaohua. However, the two of them also knew that Xiaohua only had the ability to escape when facing the two of them. He absolutely did not have the power to counterattack. As long as the two of them continued to chase, there would be a day when they would kill Xiaohua. Thus, the two of them did not hesitate to put away their imperial equipment. They urged their figures to teleport to the place where Xiaohua disappeared. The two of them were right, but they never thought that as early as hundreds of years ago, Daoist Jingyu of the Morning Rain continent had the same idea. Shan Xingzi and Daoist Du Yi also had the same idea. Of course, this was the outcome of the three of them. It was also not what the two of them expected. Xiaohua originally did not find a suitable escape route. Now that he was being forced by the two grandmasters, he was already panicking and hungry. He could only fly in the direction he saw before. When he reached the edge of the space, Xiaohua hurriedly withdrew his dragon vein Dharma body and plunged into a small space passageway. "Brother Ordinary, please wait a moment. This Xiaohua is too cunning. This old man will go first." Sun Cheng hurriedly transmitted his voice from the space passageway. Unexpectedly, Sun Hao did not give way and replied, "Brother Jianjing, don't be anxious. This old man has already arrived." While speaking, Sun Hao's figure distorted and fell into the space passageway. "Brother Ordinary." Sun Cheng hurriedly shouted, "Be careful of Xiaohua's ambush." Following Sun Cheng's voice, rumble. There was a loud sound. The space passageway was shaking. In the midst of the explosion, Sun Hao dodged out of the space passageway with a dusty face. His face was green and red. Although he did not suffer any special injuries, his face had been torn off by Xiaohua and ruthlessly stepped on. "AI, Brother Ordinary is too impatient." Sun Cheng said very sincerely, "This Xiaohua is like a slippery loach. His strength can't be considered outstanding, but he has a lot of tricks up his sleeves and is full of schemes. This old man chased all the way and didn't gain any advantage either." "Humph. All Daoist cultivators are like that." Sun Hao couldn't blame Sun Cheng. After all, Sun Cheng had already warned them and rushed to enter. He could only snort coldly and say, "They're used to being killed by us Confucian cultivators. They're like rats in the field, with countless holes to hide in. Hurry up and chase after him." After 2 or 3 sentences, the space channel had already calmed down. Sun Cheng urged, "Brother Ordinary, you should still stay in front. However, you must be careful of that guy's traps whenever you take a turn." "All right, I understand." Sun Hao nodded. "Since I already know, how can I still be afraid of him?" Then, the 2 grandmasters cautiously flew closer to the spatial tunnel. Xiaohua did not have the time to tidy up his emotions, nor did he have the time to repair his body. The imperial equipment of the Immortal Palace was very strange, and the demonic technique of the blood-dripping paradise was very difficult to repair. In particular, the burning heaven-casting earth technique had destroyed some of the surface of his body. Now, it was also very troublesome. Now, Xiaohua was only focused on one thing, and that was to methodically lay down fire talismans along the way. Even when he had just entered the tunnel, he had specially used the capital star formation technique to lay down hundreds of fire talismans. Within the space, the green-robed Xiaohua was using all his strength. One after another, extremely powerful fire talismans were mixed with the newly comprehended lightning technique of Xiaohua. This spatial passage was rather strange. It was like an ordinary winding path in the mountains, twisting and turning. It was also thanks to Xiaohua's innate spatial sense that every time he was about to crash into an inexplicable barrier, he would stop. And every time such a situation occurred, Xiaohua would unhesitatingly place down a fire talisman. Thus, Xiaohua flew in front of his head. Behind him, firecracker-like explosions could be heard. However, after 4 hours, Xiaohua's good luck was completely exhausted. He had reached the end of the spatial tunnel, and this end was like a dead end with no exit. Xiaohua hurriedly turned around, trying to find another way out based on his memory. However, he had only returned a few hundred feet when his figure froze. This was because after entering the tunnel, Xiaohua had not encountered any other forks. In other words, there was only one way out of this spatial tunnel. With a quick thought, Xiaohua immediately flew to the end of the spatial tunnel. He slapped his forehead with the back of his hand and opened his delusion breaker Dharma Eye. A fist-sized silver beam of light shot out from the Dharma Eye and landed directly on the spatial barrier. Woo-woo. In the silver light, thumb-sized vortexes appeared. When the vortexes deepened, they all gathered together. Xiaohua waved his hand and a bronze light flashed on his arm. A several feet long spatial crack was torn open by Xiaohua. Hua hua. Just as the spatial crack opened, a gust of wind and rain poured in. The sparkling raindrops revealed a salty and moist aura. Xiaohua glanced at it and did not hurry to fly out. Instead, he retreated 100 feet. Seeing that there were still some explosions in the distance, the delirium breaker Lao once again produced a silver beam of light that landed on the spatial barrier. Unfortunately, this time, the silver beam of light had already penetrated a few feet deep. Xiaohua's hands tore the spatial barrier apart, but he did not see any aura from outside the spatial barrier. Damn it! Xiaohua's plan to set up a trap fell through. He was just about to fly to the side to try again, but unfortunately, a somewhat weak clear light swept over. Xiaohua's figure flashed in fright and he tore open the spatial crack that had already mostly closed and flew out. Where is this? Xiaohua flew out of the void and released his divine sense. He saw that the sky was filled with red clouds. Bursts of lightning flashed in the red clouds, and the pouring rain flashed a strange light in the night sky. Xiaohua looked around and did not know where to go. He rushed towards a certain place. Wang wang. Xiaohua had only just rushed out 100 zhang when his divine sense was suddenly blocked by a solid barrier. That barrier was like a heavy hammer that struck his divine sense out of nowhere. Although Xiaohua had already tempered his divine sense to the point that it was like an iron hammer, this tremendous force of impact shook Xiaohua's divine sense and caused it to roll back. Waves of indescribable force crashed into his Naiwan palace. Not good. Xiaohua was like a bird startled by the twang of a bow. Although he could not see clearly whether the person in the distance was friend or foe, he did not investigate further. His figure suddenly rushed upwards, wanting to escape from this dangerous place. "You are Xiaohua." A slightly surprised voice came from all directions. This voice was very deep. "No, how did you come out from here? Could it be that Sun Jinjing's message was wrong? Damn it, is there a mistake?" Xiaohua's heart was completely flustered. 2 Confucian martial grandmasters were not enough, and a third actually came. Could it be that this Xiao is going to lose his life here? Xiaohua did not answer, but that did not mean that the Confucian martial grandmaster who came to capture Xiaohua would not make a move. Following that voice, pillars of vast qi rose up within 1,000 li. These pillars of qi condensed into small yellow dots the size of mung beans in front of Xiaohua's eyes. These small dots emitted vigorous and solid fluctuations, completely enveloping the area within 1,000 li. Although Xiaohua did his best to urge the lightning, his figure still slowed down. Xiaohua's heart turned cold. He coldly turned his head and looked at the space enveloped by the qi of earth. There was not a single drop of water in this space. Then, his gaze crossed the space and landed on a short and fat Confucian martial grandmaster in the distance. This Confucian martial grandmaster was not only fat, but his nose and eyes were also small. There were even 2 mustaches at the corners of his mouth that resembled a rat's tail. "In that case, I'll kill you first." Xiaohua made up his mind. He suddenly turned around and flew at an angle to another place. "Oh. Why is this guy flying over there?" Seeing Xiaohua turn around and fly to another place, the Confucian martial grandmaster was slightly taken aback. He looked in that direction with some astonishment. However, a moment later, the Confucian martial grandmaster's doubts disappeared. After all, within his domain, no matter which direction Xiaohua went, it was impossible to escape from his grasp. Moreover, there was nothing special about the place Xiaohua fled to. However, for safety's sake, the Confucian martial grandmaster still urged his figure. His figure flashed and appeared not far from Xiaohua. The Confucian martial grandmaster revealed his figure. He raised his hand and patted the top of his head. A majestic subsidiary body appeared. Moreover, the subsidiary body grabbed Xiaohua with its big hand, just like the hand of a Taoist martial grandmaster's nascent soul. The qi of earth on the big hand surrounded Xiaohua's body. The true qi produced a tyrannical imprisoning force, wanting to seal Xiaohua's meridians. Roar! Xiaohua roared. A bronze brilliance flashed around his body. He did his best to resist the Confucian martial grandmaster's imprisonment. However, because the bronze brilliance was already injured, its brilliance dimmed. Many places on the surface of his body actually began to collapse. It's only a so-so. Seeing Xiaohua's body being easily defeated, the Confucian martial grandmaster laughed loudly and slowly withdrew his arm. Xiaohua was secretly delighted. He quietly waited for the Confucian martial grandmaster to approach. However, after a few moments, the Confucian martial grandmaster's arm stopped. The other hand was also raised. It looked like it wanted to grab the other side of Xiaohua's body, wanting to tear Xiaohua apart. Roar! Xiaohua roared again. As he roared, he patted the top of his head. The dragon bloodline Xiaohua once again rushed out of his body. The true dragon might frighten the Confucian martial grandmaster so much that his face changed wildly. Immediately after, the dragon bloodline Xiaohua used the heavenly dragon technique to destroy the nearby space seal. When the space collapsed, the Confucian martial grandmaster's subsidiary body also trembled violently. Xiaohua took the opportunity to escape from the subsidiary body's big hand. A five-clawed true dragon. This Confucian cultivator was just as shocked as Sun Hao and Sun Qing. His jaw almost dropped to the ground. While his eyes revealed extreme greed, his figure suddenly closed in. His sun body also reached out with his big hand, wanting to capture dragon vein Xiaohua. Woo-woo. Just as the Confucian martial grandmaster was about to grab the dragon bloodline Xiaohua, an inexplicable beam of light suddenly blasted towards the Confucian martial grandmaster. The Confucian martial grandmaster was frightened and hastily dodged. Although the Confucian martial grandmaster's robe was only damaged by the beam of light, the Confucian martial grandmaster was still abnormally ashamed and angry. However, what made the Confucian martial grandmaster even more puzzled was that after the beam of light, Xiaohua's figure suddenly closed in and quickly rushed over. Chapter 4066. Although the Confucian cultivator was puzzled, how could he dare to let Xiaohua approach him? He looked at dragon vein Xiaohua with some reluctance, and his figure suddenly faded. The Confucian cultivator was about to teleport in his own domain. At this moment, the Confucian cultivator was stunned because Xiaohua suddenly stopped. After dragon vein Xiaohua returned to his body, he waved his hand and took out a jade bottle. He poured the medicinal pills in the jade bottle into his mouth. What is he doing? Although the Confucian cultivator's figure was distorted, he didn't completely disappear. He looked at Xiaohua's strange behavior and muttered to himself. What made the Confucian cultivator feel strange was that when Xiaohua took the medicinal pills, the previous pillar of light soared into the sky again. However, this time, 100 nascent souls of different colors rushed out like fireworks, breaking through the already thin domain and surrounding the short and fat Confucian cultivator. These 100 nascent souls fell in the air and immediately arranged the Du Tianxing formation according to Xiaohua's thoughts. They sat cross-legged in the air and closed their eyes, facing the Confucian cultivator. Rumble. Hundreds of heavenly lightning bolts carrying the might of heaven and earth fell from the sky at the same time as the nascent souls appeared. Not only did they imprison the nascent souls, but they also imprisoned Xiaohua and the Confucian martial grandmaster. The power of the first tribulation of the 100 scattered nascent souls was really great. The Confucian cultivator looked up and saw that the immature heaven and earth imprisonment had completely scattered his domain. There was also the lightning in the sky that was originally raging with thunder. How could he not know what Xiaohua was thinking? He made a prompt decision, and a dark red color appeared on his face. Then, blood-yellow true qi gushed out from the surface of his body. The sub-body that couldn't move because of the confinement force suddenly stretched out a blood-colored arm. Bang, bang, bang. It successively crushed a dozen nascent souls that were facing the initial tribulation. These dozen nascent souls exploded, and the power overflowed. Not only was the power of the Du Tianxing formation greatly reduced, but the imprisonment of the heavenly tribulation also weakened a lot. The Confucian cultivator felt his sub-body loosen, and then a sinister smile appeared on his face. He said, "To catch bandits, first catch the king. Xiaohua, this old man will catch you first." As it speaks, that huge sub-body stretches out its arm and pinches towards Xiaohua's main body. Woo-woo. Before the scholarly cultivator's arm could fall, Xiaohua's body suddenly emitted an extremely strange fluctuation. As soon as this fluctuation fell into the air, it immediately shattered the scholarly cultivator's domain and even spread out rapidly into the distance. Moreover, from Xiaohua's body, a powerful aura spread out, and his divine sense broke free from the shackles and spread out in all directions. This. A sense of foreboding welled up in the scholar's heart. He. Xiaohua laughed coldly and took out another jade bottle. He tilted his head back and poured the medicinal pills inside into his mouth. Wu Han, quickly run. Right at this moment, Sun Cheng and Sun Hao appeared at the place where Xiaohua had fled from earlier. When the two of them saw the situation before them, they were scared out of their wits. Sun Cheng even warned, "This is the initial tribulation of dispersing nascent soul, not good. Brother Qinghua, dodge quickly. This is the heavenly tribulation of a Taoist cultivator's advancement. Xiaohua seems to be advancing." Sun Hao shouted. "Damn it, what kind of freak did I encounter?" When the short and fat cultivator named Wu Han heard this, he trembled with fear. How could he still care about bullying Xiaohua? His figure swayed and he was about to teleport away. Unfortunately, his figure only dimmed for a moment before reappearing in the same place. The initial tribulation of 100 dispersing nascent souls had already descended and the entire space was sealed. How could a scholarly cultivator great-grandmaster escape from here? Others may not know what dispersing nascent soul is and what the initial tribulation of dispersing nascent soul means, but these three people are the inspectors of the immortal palace. They are most exposed to the strange things of the hidden immortal continent, especially regarding the cultivation methods of the Taoist sections. They know a lot. Seeing that they actually encountered the legendary dispersing nascent soul initial tribulation, how could the three of them not tremble with fear? Wu Han, who was among them, complained incessantly. He raised his hand and patted. 3 defensive imperial equipment flew out from his Qinkuan pouch. One was a palm-sized shield, one was a golden armor, and the last one was a large dragon scale. Wu Han spat out 3 breaths of qi in succession. The palm-sized shield emitted a wang-wang sound and suddenly expanded. The inscription on the armor, which should have triggered the vast void qi pillar, was now only the size of a thumb. It was barely able to trigger the wisps of vast void qi from the cracks in the void. However, the inscription on the armor still emitted the light of law, fighting against the heaven and earth imprisonment to protect one side of Wu Han. Wu Han's armor was triggered by true qi. It was completely golden, as if it was made of gold. Dragon and phoenix inscriptions faintly appeared on the armor and slowly flowed in the golden light. Wu Han didn't dare to be negligent. He put on the armor, then raised his hand and patted. 3-colored true qi gushed out. An earthy yellow secondary body of several dozen feet in size condensed on top of his head. The dragon scale, which was triggered by true qi, emitted a faint dragon qi and fell into the secondary body's hand. The secondary body supported the secondary body with both hands. The secondary body actually turned into a thick, characteristic dam of several dozen feet in size and laid horizontally on top of the secondary body's head. After doing all this, Wu Han's face turned pale. That short and fat body seemed to have thinned out of thin air. The area within 1,000 miles was shrouded by hundreds of initial tribulations of scattered nascent souls. The area within 100 miles where Wu Han and Xiaohua were sitting was the focus. The noble qi in the void had already been imprisoned. If Wu Han wanted to mobilize true qi, he could only rely on his middle dantian. The 3 imperial equipment and the secondary body that appeared were all the results of Wu Han's struggle with the heaven and earth prison. Wu Han fiercely glanced at Xiaohua, whose body's pressure was getting stronger and stronger. His divine sense was also getting more and more majestic. He gritted his teeth, his gaze swept across the sky and landed on Sun Hao and Sun Qing in the distance, who were somewhat at a loss. At this time, the entire space was shrouded by the thunder tribulation. All the images appeared distorted. Sun Hao and Sun Qing saw the imperial equipment that Wu Han took out. There was a trace of comfort in their panic. Sun Qing whispered, "Brother Ordinary, did you see the 2 imperial equipment that Wu Han just took out?" "And, of course I saw it." Sun Hao's expression didn't break away from the shock, but his tone was filled with jealousy. "Isn't that armor the battle immortal armor in the Immortal Palace's treasury? Isn't that dragon scale the ancient Daoist magic treasure Black Nightshade?" "That's right, I really don't know how Wu Han got these 2 treasures." Sun Qing echoed, "Facing the initial tribulation of these 100 scattered soul cultivators, this old man has no confidence in escaping. But if Wu Han has these 2 treasures, I'm afraid he has a 40% chance. And the Battle Immortal armor was used by the previous Battle Immortal general. Its defensive ability has been tested in a great battle. It should be able to protect Wu Han's body." Sun Hao frowned and replied, "And the Black Nightshade is the scale armor left behind by the ancient Earth Holy Dragon on the Dragon Island. It was forcibly taken away from the Dragon Island by the ancient Daoist magic sect and refined into a defensive magic treasure. When the Daoist magic sect was destroyed, it was tempered into an imperial equipment by the Immortal Palace. Its defensive ability is even stronger than the Battle Immortal armor." However, Sun Qing was still a little worried. "However, although these 2 imperial equipment are powerful, they are also seriously damaged. They are not as good as the previous one. It doesn't seem to be in good condition." "Hee hee." Sun Hao sneered. He looked at Xiaohua, who was continuously putting medicinal pills into his mouth, and said, "The initial tribulation of a scattered soul cultivator is nothing to us, who is about to step into the sage of literature. Brother Qingbo's danger is that the initial tribulation of 100 scattered soul cultivators will come at the same time. However, there is only one wave of initial tribulation of 100 scattered soul cultivators. Moreover, the center of this 100 initial tribulation is not Brother Qingbo. He is only affected by it. Although these 2 imperial equipment are not in good condition, they are enough to withstand it. Qingbo only needs to protect his true spirit from being destroyed and withstand the effects of these 100 scattered soul cultivators' lightning tribulation. After that, wouldn't everything be completely under our control? What I am worried about now is this Xiaohua. Looking at his pressure, he is only at the 5th grade of essence energy. This level of heavenly tribulation can only restrict our movements. It cannot cause any harm to us. Even if he advanced to the 6th grade of essence energy, what can he do? Him choosing to advance at this time is really puzzling to me. How can Xiaohua's strength be at the 5th grade of essence energy? Sun Cheng was also puzzled. If he was at the spirit severing stage, why would I need to call the 2 of you over? However, what Brother Ordinary said is right. I also feel that something is wrong. I don't know what medicine Xiaohua is selling in his gourd. The corner of Sun Hao's mouth twitched slightly and said, "Who cares what medicine it is? Even if he has some method to kill Wu Han. Even if he advanced to the 6th grade of essence energy, how can the current him be a match for you and me? Even if we have to chase him to the ends of the earth, we can still kill him. It's moving, the lightning tribulation is coming." Right at this moment, the sound of thunder boomed in the sky. Within 1,000 li hundreds of lightning tribulations fell from the sky as if they were rushing to the market, cheerfully landing on the bodies of the 100 scattered soul cultivators. Naturally, Xiaohua and Wu Han, who were in the center of the lightning, were also struck by the lightning tribulation. This was the initial tribulation of 100 scattered soul cultivators. The might of this lightning tribulation was more than twice the lightning tribulation that Xiaohua encountered previously. However, compared to the previous lightning tribulation, there were some advantages this time. That was that Xiaohua was also advancing. His body was also shackled by heaven and earth. When the lightning tribulation fell, it first passed through different heaven and earth shackles before hitting Xiaohua's body. The might was reduced by a lot. However, even so, Xiaohua's body that had just been injured by the two Confucian cultivators collapsed under this lightning tribulation. Looking at Wu Han, he was inferior to Xiaohua. Boom! Amidst the sound of thunder, the imperial equipment shield that was first summoned appeared with many armor inscriptions, revealing immortal palace inscriptions. However, these immortal palace inscriptions were quickly destroyed by the laws of heaven and earth. Moreover, the armor inscriptions were shattered by the lightning tribulation. The lightning tribulation's might didn't stop. It roared and pounced towards the child body and the long kuei on the child body's head. Dragon patterns rushed out from the long kuei and a coiled dragon image suddenly rose up when the lightning tribulation hit the long kuei. Roar! This dragon image was not complete. The long kuei that had just pounced out was immediately blocked by countless lightning tribulations. These lightning tribulations were not Xiaohua's lightning tribulations. They were filled with the power of heaven and earth. The dragon image was only able to struggle a few times before it was annihilated by the lightning tribulation. The dragon scales of the main body turned into powder under the lightning tribulation. Chapter 4067. Fortunately. Seeing this, Sun Qing in the distance breathed a sigh of relief and laughed. After all, Long Kuei blocked most of the lightning tribulation, Brother Qingbue should be fine. The rest of the lightning tribulation naturally fell on Wu Han's secondary body. That secondary body was condensed from earth energy, and in the end of the lightning tribulation, its arms were destroyed, but other parts of its body were not injured. Phew! The three Confucian cultivators, including Wu Han, breathed a sigh of relief. Unfortunately, before they could exhale, they saw the 100 or so scattered nascent souls sitting cross-legged around Wu Han open their eyes at the same time. Every pair of eyes contained the mockery in Xiaohua's eyes. As the 100 or so scattered nascent souls formed lightning hand seals, the 100 or so lightning bolts once again fell on Wu Han. Sun Cheng and Sun Hao were far away, but Wu Han was in the middle of the crowd of scattered nascent souls. He could clearly see the mockery in the eyes of the hundreds of scattered nascent souls. He turned his head to look at Xiaohua beside him in disbelief. An inconceivable thought was still growing wildly in his mind. These hundreds of scattered nascent souls, are all Xiaohua's doppelgangers. It was a pity that he didn't have the time to think too much. These 100 bolts of lightning were even more powerful than the lightning tribulation earlier. Furthermore, the angle of these 100 bolts of lightning completely enveloped his sub-body and corporeal body. There wasn't any blind spot. His huge sub-body already had a pair of arms severed, and at this moment, it collapsed from the lightning tribulation. The battle immortal armor protecting Wu Han's physical body suddenly emitted a brilliant brilliance. An immortal general riding a heavenly horse waved his immortal weapon, and an almost unparalleled force met the lightning tribulation along with the golden light. Rumble! An extremely loud sound exploded in the sky. The space within hundreds of miles was continuous, and the restrictions of heaven and earth were also loosened in the waves. Kacha! In the roar, the golden brilliance that illuminated the sky was suddenly annihilated. A crisp sound fell into Wu Han's ears, and then, hundreds of sharp forces poured into his physical body. Wu Han looked at the fragments of the battle immortal armor that had been cut off from his body. He gritted his teeth, and a bloody light surged around his body. A large blood-red cloud spurted out from his physical body. Kacha! Like silkworms eating mulberry leaves, when the cloud was destroyed by the lightning tribulation that was nearing its end also disappeared. Wu Han's face was deathly pale. Sensing that the restrictions around him had loosened, his eyes spitting fire, he looked at Xiaohua who was not far from him. At this time, Xiaohua's body was covered in molten bronze, and he was not much better than Wu Han. Good. Sun Qing said, Brother Qingbu's strength has greatly increased, it's really beyond our expectations. Today, Brother Qingbu's credit. Sons of course, of the hundreds of scattered nascent souls who had passed the initial tribulation, the strength of scattered nascent souls, strength of scattered heavens. As for Wu Han, countless tiny whirlpools appeared around his body, and strands of true energy were produced from the whirlpools. After the heaven and earth were imprisoned, he would madly absorb the noble qi. Although the heavenly tribulation of Xiaohua's avatar was powerful, in the eyes of Wu Han, Sun Hao, and Sun Qing, it was not comparable to the initial tribulation of the hundreds of scattered nascent souls. Even Wu Han was eager to fight, waiting for Xiaohua's nascent soul to appear so that he could give Xiaohua a show of strength. However, the situation was still beyond the expectations of the three Confucian cultivators. Just as the three of them were about to move, Xiaohua's divine sense, which was suppressed by the initial tribulation of the hundreds of scattered nascent souls, crazily expanded, and the hundreds of scattered nascent souls suddenly and strangely disappeared along with his divine sense. Ah! What is Xiaohua doing? Seeing that the scattered nascent souls disappeared and Xiaohua's pressure increased greatly, Sun Cheng was very puzzled. Could it be that he thinks he is undergoing a lightning tribulation? How ridiculous! Sun Hao felt Xiaohua's crazy pressure in his divine sense, which was several times stronger than that of ordinary Daoist divinity severing stage cultivators, and his face became somewhat unfriendly. He said in a low voice, the heavenly tribulation of the fifth stage of Daoist divinity stage should be an out-of-body tribulation, so naturally there will be no lightning tribulation. However, until now, we have not seen Xiaohua's nascent soul. Don't forget, Xiaohua has many tricks up his sleeve. Now that Wu Han's true energy is exhausted, he is trapped in Xiaohua's heavenly tribulation. If Xiaohua's heavenly tribulation is big enough, it may affect his absorption of the noble qi. Without the noble qi, Wu Han will be seriously injured. How can he be Xiaohua's opponent? But Sun Cheng was bewildered again. Xiaohua can't move during the tribulation. And after he passes the tribulation, you and I are still at his side, how can we just watch him kill Wu Han? I don't know. Sun Hao shook his head slightly. However, I feel that this time, Wu Han is most likely going to die. Just as Sun Hao finished speaking, a huge gust of wind whistled above Xiaohua's head. Within several thousand li, a five-colored spirit tide suddenly appeared. This spirit tide was extremely dense, and it was as if patches of multicolored clouds had enveloped the sky. When this multicolored cloud appeared, Wu Han almost vomited blood. Such a dense spirit tide filled several thousand li, and it had already pushed the noble qi several thousand li away. At this moment, the void was also filled with all kinds of strange fluctuations. Even if Wu Han had stepped into the realm of literature saint, he probably wouldn't be able to absorb even a trace of noble qi from nearby, right? Wu Han's thoughts were naturally similar to Sun Chang's. He hurriedly withdrew his cultivation technique, and activated the little remaining true energy in his body. Like a poisonous snake, he quietly waited there, waiting for Xiaohua to pass the tribulation, and immediately reveal his poisonous fangs. Wu Han was trapped by the restriction of Xiaohua's tribulation, so he couldn't see the range and power of the spirit tide. However, Sun Hao and Sun Qing could see it clearly. Moreover, under Xiaohua's oppressive pressure, they continuously retreated, and the expression in their eyes gradually turned into fear. This seems to be the spirit tide of a Dao sex cultivator during the spirit severing stage, right? Sun Hao whispered in shock, as if he was asking himself, but also as if he was asking Sun Qing. Sun Cheng also murmured, this divine sense isn't just at the out-of-body stage, right? Moreover, the spirit tide is so dense, it's simply like a spirit cloud. Even during the ancient Tao sect's prosperity, there weren't many cultivators who could reach such a terrifying realm, right? But Xiaohua's pressure is clearly at the out-of-body stage. Sun Hao seemed to understand something, and said with narrowed eyes, this bastard must have some secret technique. He suppressed the growth of his realm, otherwise, he would have been discovered by my immortal palace's inspector. Xiaohua has such strength. Sun Cheng nodded slightly. I'm afraid he's even more powerful than the Grand Mist ancestor, right? Sun Hao's figure was forced to retreat again by the spirit cloud and divine sense. He replied thoughtfully, of course. Therefore, this is our only chance to kill Xiaohua. If the immortal emperor finds out, we won't have the chance to find the 9 cauldrons and obtain the 5-clawed true dragon. Not just the immortal emperor. Sun Cheng reminded, even the Dragon Island isn't something we can provoke. This Xiaohua is really a big fish. Sun Hao sighed with emotion, he's even bigger than the Grand Mist ancestor by 3 times. Woo! Sun Cheng and Sun Hao retreated 3 steps under Xiaohua's heavenly tribulation. Wuhan was also waiting for an opportunity. In the end, a hurricane formed several thousand feet above Xiaohua's head, and the 5-colored spirit cloud within several thousand miles rushed towards this hurricane, forming a huge funnel in the sky. This several thousand feet in size was naturally the location of Xiaohua's formless nascent soul, so the 3 Confucian cultivators naturally couldn't see it. Seeing the world's origin energy within several thousand miles being swept away, a fierce wind blew from the surroundings, and the same grand aura surged in the fierce wind. Wuhan narrowed his eyes, and the cultivation method in his body surged, preparing to wait until the restriction disappeared to launch a thunderous attack on Xiaohua. Rumble. Unfortunately, before Wuhan's thunderous attack was ready, the tribulation clouds that had just dispersed reappeared in the sky, and this time the tribulation clouds were extremely similar to the tribulation clouds of the 100 scattered nascent souls before. Ah! Wuhan was really once bitten by a snake, twice shy. While trembling with fear, he hurriedly looked around, wanting to see where the scattered nascent souls appeared again. However, other than the familiar restriction of heaven and earth that was becoming increasingly firm and binding him to the point that he couldn't even move, he didn't see a single strand of nascent soul hair. Not to mention Sun Hao and Sun Cheng in the distance, even Xiaohua himself was at a loss. This is the first tribulation of a scattered nascent soul. Ah! What does it have to do with me? My body is perfectly fine here, so how did the invisible nascent soul above my head attract the lightning tribulation? However, at this time, Xiaohua didn't have anything to think about. His nascent soul had been through the lightning tribulation for a longer time than the 100 scattered nascent souls. The red lightning fell, and above Xiaohua's head, several 100 feet in size collapsed with a loud bang. Then, within the lightning, it gradually expanded from the size of a fist to 1,000 feet, and the lightning tribulation came to an end. Wuhan suddenly had a hair-raising feeling, as if the 100 scattered nascent souls were looking at him with mocking gazes. Wuhan wailed and hurriedly urged the little true qi in his body. Sure enough, the lightning strangely flew out from the top of Xiaohua's head and landed on Wuhan's naked body like a horned dragon, instantly destroying half of Wuhan's physical body. Damn it, this is somewhat inexplicable. Sun Hao's eyes flashed with a pale golden light, and he frowned. Where did Xiaohua's nascent soul go? Why can't I see it? Could it be the invisible nascent soul? Sun Cheng very naturally thought of the most likely result. Of course this old man has heard of the invisible nascent soul. Sun Hao was puzzled. But no matter what kind of invisible nascent soul it is, it still has to appear under the lightning tribulation. Moreover, How did Xiaohua attract the first tribulation of a scattered nascent soul? Or? Sun Cheng held his chin and said thoughtfully, this nascent soul isn't Xiaohua's own. Forget it, don't think too much. Sun Hao's true chi surged as he said indifferently, Xiaohua's heavenly tribulation has passed, prepare to capture him. After searching his soul, everything will be clear, okay? Sun Cheng also urged his body, preparing to fly to the other side and let Xiaohua escape. However, before the two of them could fly, the tribulation clouds that had just dispersed in the sky condensed again, and this time, the tribulation clouds actually had 4 colors. Following the appearance of the 4-colored tribulation clouds, a heaven and earth restriction even more powerful than before spread out in all directions with Xiaohua as the center. Sun Cheng and Sun Hao were like birds startled by the twang of a bow. They hurriedly fled far away, for fear of being affected by this restriction. Chapter 4068. As for Wu Han, who was inside the restriction, he wanted to cry but had no tears. His heart gradually became numb. Rumble. The lightning fell, enveloping the area within 100 miles of Xiaohua. Xiaohua's body immediately turned into a golden liquid. Within the golden liquid, there was not only dragon qi that flowed around the dragon patterns, but also 5-colored true qi that flowed around the inscriptions on the armor. At the same time, the runes that were the size of ants danced together with strands of soul silk. The aura that came from the Great Desolation even set off whirlpools within the golden liquid. What is this? Wu Han's eyes were as big as walnuts, as if he had seen the most incomprehensible thing in the world. However, his confusion only lasted for a few breaths. The aftermath of the lightning tribulation destroyed his body. As the inspector of the immortal palace, Wu Han naturally had a secret technique to temper his body. However, his body that had been tempered thousands of times by the lightning tribulation turned into ashes like paper. In the end, Wu Han suddenly understood, this seems to be the lightning tribulation of the great monster of the monster clan. Xiaohua is a human, Wu Han understood too late, and he didn't have the chance to think more. Poor him, he was ravaged by the lightning tribulation again and again. In the end, he finally died a worthy death, a great death, a glorious death. Moreover, a strand of his nascent soul had just escaped and had yet to identify a direction to escape to. Rumble. The second bolt of tribulation lightning struck. Even Wu Han's nascent soul couldn't escape being ravaged by the tribulation lightning. Wu Han died. His soul was destroyed. In the distance, Sun Hao and Sun Cheng couldn't see the situation inside the lightning tribulation, so they didn't notice. However, when they saw the fierce great monster's lightning tribulation falling, they had already mourned for Wu Han in their hearts. How did Xiaohua attract the great monster's lightning tribulation? Although Sun Cheng and Sun Hao had doubts in their hearts, thinking about the 5-clawed true dragon, the two of them were thoughtful, so no one said a word. Things had already reached this point. Even if the 5-clawed true dragon could cultivate into a great saint, the two of them couldn't stop. Xiaohua's last wave of lightning tribulation lasted for a day and a night. When the tribulation clouds dispersed and the restrictions of heaven and earth disappeared, Sun Cheng and Sun Hao's burning heaven casting earth technique once again pounced over. After witnessing Xiaohua's mysteriousness, the two of them became a lot more cautious and didn't particularly get close to him. Xiaohua had escaped from the thunder tribulation. His entire body was brimming with true essence, and a rare eagerness was born from the bottom of his heart. As Xiaohua breathed, the heaven and earth origin energy within 1,000 miles of him seemed to surge. Xiaohua understood in his heart that although he had taken 2,560 dark-breaking pills and had truly stepped into the severed divinity stage, and his formless nascent soul was a scattered soul that had crossed the initial tribulation, and his monster body had been reconstructed during the Thunder Tribulation, he still didn't have any chance of victory against two Confucian Grand Masters who were on the verge of becoming saints of literature. Motherfucker. Xiaohua's arm flashed with a bronze color, tearing apart the shackles on the edge of the burning heaven-cast earth. Relying on the strength of his physical body, he once again activated the lightning escape technique. At the same time, he cursed in his heart with regret. If I had known earlier that the formless nascent soul would have an initial tribulation and the demon body would also have 4 lightning tribulations, I would have pulled these 2 Confucian cultivators in as well. Unfortunately, there was no medicine for regret in this world. Rumble. Xiaohua's entire body rumbled with thunder. His figure transformed into a bolt of lightning, and very arrogantly rushed towards the horizon. After only flying for a moment, the thunder that resounded through the sky became somewhat mute, as if it was molting. Xiaohua's heart stirred. Between his eyebrows, at the top of his head, the 3 corpses Yin Thunder and 5 Qi Thunder hurriedly rushed out. Woo! A sharp whistling sound was emitted, and Xiaohua's speed suddenly increased. What's going on now? Sun Cheng and Sun Cheng were startled once again. Right in front of their eyes, the dark green 3 corpses Yin Thunder and light purple 5 Qi Thunder flashed again, intertwining with the thunder around Xiaohua's body. Thousands upon thousands of righteous qi, thousands upon thousands of heaven and earth origin energy rushed into the thunder, and the sound of thunder began to become mute. Xiaohua's lightning escape technique, which was originally about to break through, now forcibly entered the 6 paths of lightning. The speed of the lightning escape was 3 times faster than before. Soon, it would exceed the range of the 2's clear eyes technique. I'm afraid because of the increase in his realm, his flying technique has advanced again, right? Sun Hao coldly smiled. He raised his hand and pointed at the heaven-burning furnace. The heaven-burning furnace fell under his feet and said, "Looks like we can only catch up with him first." "AI, all right." Sun Cheng also helplessly smiled bitterly. He pointed at the earth-casting furnace and floated up. He helplessly said, "This old man has never felt that killing a Dao sect cultivator was so troublesome." As the 2 activated their imperial equipment, the 2 imperial equipment respectively surged out a silver-white cloud and a light blue cloud. They were not inferior to Xiaohua's speed at all. Although these 2 imperial equipment were far apart, in the sky, the 2 clouds faintly intertwined with each other, letting out a rumbling sound. Damn it, as the saying goes, when the Tao is 1 foot tall, the devil is 10 feet tall. Seeing this, Xiaohua's joy from the lightning escape's advancement was swept away. He unconsciously cursed in his heart, "This Xiao was able to fly fast just now, these 2 can also activate their flying imperial equipment." Cursing was cursing, Xiaohua still had to activate his true essence to use the lightning escape technique. The lightning escape technique consumed a lot more true essence than the lightning travel 3 realms. When Xiaohua activated it, a suffocating feeling was born from his lower dantian. He had no choice but to carefully deal with it. After flying for a few more days, Xiaohua had already completely lost his direction. Moreover, the true essence in his body was greatly consumed because of supporting the lightning escape technique. However, because Xiaohua and the green-robed Xiaohua were refining pills in the space, and Xiaohua was tempering these pills, he was not afraid of true essence drying up. However, Sun Cheng and Sun Hao were like maggots in a tarsal bone. They were not tired, nor did their true essence dry up. They still chased after him, making him extremely distressed. This time's escape was the same as last time on the Dawn Rain continent, when he was chased by Shan Zongzi and Daoist Du Yi. Xiaohua had no place to hide, and similarly, he did not know where to find a chance of survival. On the Dawn Rain continent, there was still Shueishuehe who had no choice but to give up her life for Xiaohua. On the hidden immortal continent, there would not be this kind of love and familial love. Spiritual fire, devil blade, innate true water, lightning technique, heavenly laws embodiment technique, heaven's shocking sword, and other divine abilities, Xiaohua thought about all of them. Letting dragon vein Xiaohua, Confucian cultivator Xiaohua, green robed Xiaohua, and even soul cultivator Xiaohua come out together to besiege the two Confucian cultivator great-grandmasters, Xiaohua had also thought about it. However, Xiaohua's overall strength was only at the upper middle of the 6th grade. Even if there were 10 of him, he would still not be a match for the two Confucian cultivators at the middle of the 7th grade. After all, there was a difference of 1 grade. In the eyes of cultivators, this grade could only be reached after thousands or even tens of thousands of years of cultivation. Perhaps there is only that mysterious white bones. Thinking about the horror of the blood bones in the demonic god's blood pool, Xiaohua's heart had a kind of uneasiness. This uneasiness was even more intense than the devil blade. Although the devil blade had eroded Xiaohua's mind, he could still control it. If the white bones with 3 heads and 6 arms were gathered, Xiaohua felt that he would not be able to control it. Perhaps if he activated the white bones, he could kill the two Confucian cultivators, but what about the consequences? Perhaps it would be another demonic god's blood pool. Or perhaps it would be another mutual destruction. Xiaohua did not know. Suddenly, looking at the distant horizon, Xiaohua thought of Axayan and the words Axayan said on that rainy night. He raised his hand and took out the true scholar's token. Since it is the true scholar's token, it is also a protective amulet. What kind of surprise will it give you? The corner of Xiaohua's mouth revealed a smile. If the true scholar comes, even if he can't help this Xiao kill the two great masters, he can at least scare him away, right? Saying this, Xiaohua's hand surged with 5-colored true qi. When the true qi entered the token, the whole token emitted mottled colors. Xiaohua opened his mouth again. Pooh! The flying sword fell on it, and the token turned into powder. A wisp of 5-colored true qi rushed straight into the void and disappeared in a moment. Good! Seeing this, Xiaohua was overjoyed and also rushed into the sky. Of course, it didn't take long before Xiaohua couldn't find any trace of the multicolored light, so he could only fly forward. After another 10 days, he still didn't see any Confucian cultivators coming to save him. Xiaohua felt some strange fluctuations in the space around him, and some strange outlines began to appear in the pure space. What's going on? Xiaohua was puzzled. He released his divine sense but could not find any clues. Behind him, Sun Cheng and Sun Hao were still very close. He could only brace himself and fly forward. Hee. Xiaohua did not know where this place was, but Sun Cheng and Sun Hao knew. When the two saw Xiaohua fly to this place, a smile appeared on their faces. Even the imperial equipment under their feet slowed down. After all, they had chased for so long without sleep and rest. The two of them were also physically and mentally exhausted. Okay, Brother Ordinary. Sun Cheng breathed a sigh of relief and said with some certainty, this time we've finally blocked him. We don't need to force him too much. We just need to block him on the road of death and not let him find another opportunity to escape. When we reach that place, you and I can slowly kill him. There's no need for Brother Jianjing to say anything. Sun Hao said with a smile, since we've reached this place, this old man naturally knows what to do. We must be steady first. Ha ha ha. At this point, the two of them laughed loudly. Xiaohua flew for several days inexplicably. He saw that the mountain-like outline to his left was becoming more and more obvious. This outline was like a dark cloud, but also like a trace of space. Moreover, the outline was very similar to the mountains on land. Some of the outlines even had some traces of trees, moss, and rivers. Where is this? Why is the scene so strange? Xiaohua was once again puzzled. This is high up in the sky, second only to the earth, fire, wind, and thunder. Where did the clouds come from? Where did the trees and rivers come from? Oh, could it be, this is the Immortal Palace? No. That's not possible. Didn't Fujiwen say it before? The Immortal Palace is not something that ordinary cultivators can find. Even if this Xiao flew randomly, I'm afraid it's impossible to be so coincidental. Chapter 4069. Seeing that the situation was becoming more and more strange, exceeding his understanding, Xiaohua had the intention to fly out from these outlines. However, Sun Cheng and Sun Hao, who were following closely behind Xiaohua, were already steadily chasing after him. Xiaohua was simply unable to escape. Of course, noticing that the two were not in a hurry, Xiaohua was even more nervous, knowing that he might be flying into a dead end. Therefore, after being unable to escape from this strange place, he tried to fly towards the outline of the nearest mountain range. What made Xiaohua tremble with fear was that his divine sense had yet to come into contact with the outline of the mountain range. A kind of feeling of shock, majesty, fear, and so on came from his divine sense, forcing Xiaohua to withdraw his divine sense. With his divine sense already like this, how could Xiaohua still dare to approach? He could only fly forward. Of course, as he flew forward, Xiaohua also tried to fly to higher and lower places. However, no matter how he tried, the mountain range seemed to be eternally standing there. It was incomparably majestic, incomparably shocking, and forever something that Xiaohua could never hope to reach. I'm afraid. I can only go forward. Xiaohua's eyes turned rapidly, fiercely gritting his teeth, thinking to himself, if it really doesn't work, I'll just drag the two of them into this dangerous place together. Who knows, I might be able to rely on luck to escape this calamity. Even if there's no luck, then it's better to die together. Just as he thought of this, the sound of armored horses came from afar. At the same time, a familiar voice rang in Xiaohua's ears. Who's there? Quickly stop. This is Black Ruins Mountain, the forbidden area of the Immortal Palace. Ordinary people cannot approach. Otherwise, kill without mercy. Sun Jian. Perfected Lord Qingyuan. Xiaohua was dumbfounded. Damn, I really came to the Immortal Palace. Seeing an acquaintance, Xiaohua's eyes turned, hurriedly shouting, Perfected Lord Qingyuan. I am Xiaohua of Black Wind Mountain. I have great information about the 9 provinces of the hidden Immortal Continent. I ask Perfected Lord to report it to the Immortal Emperor. Sun Jian naturally recognized Xiaohua. Standing on the flaming chariot, he shouted, Xiaohua. This is not the Immortal Palace. If you want to see the Immortal Emperor, you'd better turn back. If you continue, don't blame this true monarch for being merciless and killing you here. Boom. Sun Jian waved the 3-pointed, double-edged blade in his hand. The thousands of immortal soldiers and immortal generals behind him all circulated their true energy, and the inescapable net appeared in front of Xiaohua's head again. Damn it! Seeing Sun Jian like this, Xiaohua cursed in his heart. This is what it means to have a wolf in front and a tiger behind. Where should I run to? As they spoke, Sun Hao and Sun Cheng's clear gazes swept over, landing on Xiaohua and Sun Jian's bodies before withdrawing. Even the speed of their pursuit slowed down. Xiaohua looked at Sun Jian, the immortal soldiers and immortal generals behind Sun Jian, and even the inescapable net in front of him. He then said, "Perfected cultivator Qing Yuan, the battle between you and me in the Black Wind Ridge didn't end. Even though we didn't really fight, this Xiao respects you as a true man. Even if you cut off all ties with this Xiao Hua will still regard you as an old friend. So this Xiao Hua will tell you frankly, you, and the immortal soldiers and immortal generals behind you are simply not this Xiao Hua's match. If you don't want to die under this Xiao Hua's hands, and if you don't want your subordinates to die under this Xiao Hua's hands, then get out of the way immediately." Now that Xiao Hua has been forced into such a situation by your Confucian cultivator, this Xiao Hua has no more scruples. If this true monarch doesn't get out of the way, you'll kill this true monarch. Sun Jian's expression didn't change as he asked indifferently. Xiao Hua nodded, "That's right. This Xiao Hua is being chased by 2 Confucian martial grandmasters behind me with no way out. I can only rush into this immortal palace's forbidden area to escape. If you don't get out of the way, then this Xiao Hua can only attack." Sun Jian raised his eyes to look at Sun Hao and Sun Cheng, who were slowly approaching, then his gaze fell on Xiao Hua again. He asked, "Do you know why those 2 martial grandmasters aren't in a hurry to kill you?" "Naturally, it's because of this forbidden area." Xiao Hua answered somewhat impatiently. "But do you know where this forbidden area is?" Sun Jian asked again. Xiao Hua sneered, "Didn't you say this place is Black Ruins Mountain?" "Correct, this place is Black Ruins Mountain." Sun Jian nodded, "But this place has another name, it's called Heaven's Prison." "Heaven? Heaven's Prison?" Xiao Hua was dumbstruck. You came to guard the Heaven's Prison." "This Heaven's Prison is the Immortal Palace's prison." "The Immortal Palace's prison isn't here." Sun Jian explained, "This place is the Heaven's Prison. Any cultivator who enters the Heaven's Prison, no matter how high their cultivation is, can never come out alive. Immortal Emperor. Great Sage. Mahavirakana Revered One." Xiao Hua sucked in a breath of cold air and said in shock, "They also can't come out alive." "Any cultivator." Sun Jian answered word by word. "This Xiao Hua understands." Xiao Hua finally understood why Sun Hao and Sun Cheng weren't in a hurry to kill him. "You're guarding this place to prevent cultivators from entering by mistake." "Of course." Sun Jian nodded, then looked at the approaching Sun Cheng and Sun Hao and said indifferently, "Since you know this is the Heaven's Prison, then turn back." "This true lord's duty is here, I can't let you pass." "Damn it, I already know this is the Heaven's Prison, how can this Xiao Hua still go in?" Xiao Hua was speechless, but he still felt lucky in his heart and asked in a low voice, "Then, what's the Heaven's Prison like?" "No one knows." Sun Jian shook his head, "No one has ever come out from there, so no one knows what's inside." "Has anyone ever gone in?" Sun Jian looked at Xiao Hua, knowing that he had not given up, and said indifferently, "Billions of years ago, there seemed to be a Wenxing who rebelled against the Immortal Palace. The Immortal Palace laid down an inescapable net but couldn't kill him. Later, he was forced into the Heaven's Prison, and disappeared." "All right." Xiao Hua waved his hand and said, "You don't need to say any more." After saying that, Xiao Hua turned around, his eyes flashing with determination as he looked at the 2 Confucian cultivators approaching. Sun Jian controlled the flaming war chariot and retreated a few li, coldly looking at everything that happened in front of him. The inescapable net in front of him had not been removed. Sun Cheng and Sun Hao flew to the front, and each of them pointed their feet. The burning sky furnace and the earth-casting furnace flew up into the air, and the earth-casting furnace landed on the ground, spinning around, waiting for an opportunity to pounce on Xiao Hua. "You too." Xiao Hua looked at the 2 imperial equipment aggressively, took out a Qinkuan bag and held it in his hand and said, "This is what you want." This Xiaohua will give it to you. However, after you take it, can you let this Xiaohua live? Sun Qing smiled and clapped his hands. People often say that a wise man submits to circumstances. Daoist Xiao is indeed a wise man. If you had done this earlier, why did you have to tear apart everyone's face? This Xiaohua thinks that he is the kind of person who will not turn back until he hits the south wall, and can't be considered a wise man. Xiaohua shook his head slightly, but now, this Xiaohua has no way out, and can only choose to compromise. As long as the two of you swear an oath, this Xiaohua will immediately send this Qianquan bag over. Sun Cheng looked at Sun Hao, and the two of them exchanged glances. Sun Cheng said somewhat regretfully, Daoist Xiao, if it was before Liao Jiang, or before your tribulation, not to mention swearing an oath, even if we directly let you go, it would not be impossible. But now, do you think that we still have the qualifications to let you go? But we must ask Daoist Xiao to make a trip with us to know the result. Sun Hao also said, but this old man feels that Daoist Xiao need not worry. If you use this item to atone for your crimes, you may still have a way out. Sigh. Xiaohua sighed, kept the Qianquan bag, and said, if the two of you let this Xiaohua go now, this Xiaohua can naturally give that item to you without worry. But if you want this Xiaohua to be captured without putting up a fight and wait to be dealt with, that won't do. If the two of you push too far, this Xiaohua will rush into Black Ruins Mountain, and let you draw water with a bamboo basket. Ha! Sun Cheng laughed loudly, pointing at the inescapable net and said, Daoist Xiao, what do you think Daoist Master Qing Yuan is doing here? Without his immortal palace imperial equipment, can you enter the heavenly prison? Besides, Daoist Xiao. Sun Hao also advised, once you enter the heavenly prison, you will definitely die. But if you follow this old man and the others back, you may not necessarily die. Why do you have to make things difficult for yourself? Xiaohua pinched his chin, thinking to himself. He understood in his heart that if it was purely because of the 9 provinces' cauldrons, he really didn't need to be too afraid. But the problem was that the Immortal Palace didn't only have a grudge with the 9 provinces' cauldrons, there were also those 100 nascent soul cultivators, and also Yaotai Mountain. He had a lot of secrets on him, and he couldn't reveal any of them, so how could he just let himself be captured without putting up a fight? Forget it. Xiaohua looked at the 2 imperial equipment approaching, and made a decision in his heart. Just as Xiaohua was about to take out white bone from the space, the heaven-burning furnace and the earth-casting furnace suddenly moved. Hundreds of vast chi pillars shot out from the void, landing on the 2 imperial equipment. The 2 imperial equipment expanded to several miles in size in a few breaths, firmly locking Xiaohua inside. Ha! Xiaohua laughed, so the two of you didn't plan to let this Xiao go. This Xiao has always been asking a tiger for its skin. When the 2 imperial equipment moved, Sun Cheng and Sun Hao naturally moved as well. The two of them urged their bodies to move, and still released the 3-colored genuine qi. Under the burning heaven-casting earth technique, the area around Xiaohua within 100 miles was enveloped in silver-white and light blue flames. Layers of righteous qi surged into the flames like waves. The surface of Xiaohua's body was naturally burned by the flames, but at this time, although the flames were fierce, they couldn't melt Xiaohua's body. Only some of the flames landed on his body, creating deep fire scars, but these fire scars quickly healed under the bronze brilliance. However, the power of the domain within the flames was heavily pressed on Xiaohua's body by the giant peak, and all of his true qi and true qi couldn't be mobilized. However, when the 2 Confucian cultivators saw Xiaohua's calm expression, they didn't dare to be negligent. Each of their sub-bodies appeared, and the sub-bodies waved their arms, urging the 2 imperial equipment to gradually close. Chapter 4070. Come out. Xiaohua finally decided. His mind entered the space and took out the three-headed, six-armed white bone. Seeing the white bone appear on top of Xiaohua's head, the two Confucian cultivators were slightly startled. However, although the white bone's body flashed with traces of lightning, the lightning didn't change in the flames. Even the white bone itself didn't change at all. It was just like a soldier puppet, without any vitality. Quick! Make your move. Sun Hao frowned and urged Sun Qing, we will quickly capture this guy. Don't let him cause any more trouble. This white bone looks really strange. Okay. Sun Qing also nodded. The two of them flew out and landed on the two sides of the two imperial equipment. They each stretched out their hands, one down and the other up. Rumble, rumble, rumble sounds could be heard in the air, and the closing speed increased. Bone-tempering fellow Daoist. At this moment, Xiaohua was calm and said in a low voice, I'm afraid only you can activate this strange white bone. Okay. Bone-tempering Xiaohua's voice was very loud. The indomitable and desolate figure walked out of Xiaohua's body and landed on the white bone. Woo-woo. An indescribable aura came out from the white bone. This aura actually blew the flames in the space away. Not good. This white bone is really strange. Sun Cheng was alarmed. His body emitted a three-colored brilliance. The burning heaven cauldron vibrated and accelerated its descent. Sigh. Xiaohua sighed and took out the blood bone from his Naiwan palace. His calm mind was a bit confused. He really didn't want to go to this step. However, seeing that his body was a bit bent under the pressure of the two imperial equipment, he clenched his teeth and placed the blood bone on top of the white bone. Swoosh. The moment the blood bone landed on the white bone, the entire space seemed to be silent. Immediately after, the white bone issued a kacha sound of vibration. Strands of lightning were born from the cracks of the white bone. After that, a desolate aura that was 10 times more powerful than the bone-tempering Xiaohua emitted from the white bone. Like a flood, it instantly covered an area of several thousand miles. Immediately after, roar. An angry roar that was even louder than Dragon Vein Xiaohua's roar came out from White Bone's three heads. It was as if it wanted to release the aura that it had held back for thousands of years, tens of thousands of years, or even hundreds of thousands of years. This furious roar was so shocking. Not only did it shake Xiaohua to the point of trembling, even the immortal soldiers and immortal generals guarding Black Ruins Mountain fell limp in midair. Quick, retreat! Sun Jian's flaming chariot was now out of flames, and his face was also filled with shock as he hurriedly gave the order. Not only that, just as the furious roar fell, the blood bone on top of White Bone's head suddenly emitted a faint blood light. This blood light was like the soul-slaying Yuan light. It streaked across the sky and landed on top of Xiaohua's head. Wang wang. Xiaohua's body trembled, and a blood shadow flew out along with the blood light and landed on White Bone's. White Bone's body instantly emitted a blood light, and a faint blood membrane covered White Bone's. This blood membrane swelled for a moment before it stopped growing and turned into a layer of skin. A skinny three-headed six-armed celestial that was several hundred feet tall appeared in front of everyone's eyes. Looking at Xiaohua again, once the blood shadow appeared, his entire body went limp in midair. Not only was his face deathly pale, his body also did not have a trace of strength. Other than being conscious, he could not even move a finger. That blood bone had already sucked out all of Xiaohua's blood essence. Boom! Once the celestial took shape, the void within several li immediately collapsed, and the previously incomparably powerful silver and blue flames were immediately extinguished. One of the celestial's heads looked up, while the other head looked down again. Two of the celestial's arms slightly drew a line in the air. Crack! Crack! Two crisp sounds rang out. No one could see how the celestial did it, but the heaven-burning furnace and the earth-casting furnace immediately exploded from the inside out, and the imprisonment within 50 kilometers was swept away. Just as the imprisonment disappeared, ka-cha-cha. Within 1,000 li, violent thunder once again set off. Countless lightning bolts, some in the shape of a ball, some in the shape of a ball, crazily fell down. The celestial's body could be seen with the naked eye. Boom! At the same time, a familiar foreign star power fell down from the lightning bolts, and a barbaric aura rushed out from within 1,000 li. Hee. An indescribable sound came out from the celestial's mouth, and a strange aura that could destroy heaven and earth was once again emitted from the celestial's body. Wherever this aura passed, all the space collapsed one after another, and nothing was spared. The inescapable net set up by Sun Jian and the other immortal soldiers and immortal generals was torn to pieces by this aura. Even the outline of the mountain range that Xiaohua's divine sense did not dare to approach before was now extremely distorted and flowing. This. Not to mention Sun Jian, even Sun Hao and Sun Cheng were dumbstruck. They turned around and fled, because how could they resist this aura that was even more powerful than Wenxing's? Ka-cha-cha! Just as the space within several hundred li was collapsing, an incomparably majestic fluctuation fell down along with a thunderbolt. Wherever the fluctuation went, all the space recovered extremely quickly. The thunderbolt fell, smashing precisely on the celestial's blood bone, and the aura that could not be contained by this world was immediately extinguished by more than half. This is the laws of heaven and earth. Although Xiaohua could not move, and could only watch as he released a crazy demon that could destroy heaven and earth, when the fluctuation and thunderbolt fell, he could clearly feel the heavenly Tao aura inside. He also understood that this celestial was definitely not an existence of the 3 continents, and was also not an existence of the 10,000 demon realm. The aura formed by a celestial was also not something that this world could contain, so the laws of heaven and earth descended to seal and eliminate the celestial's aura. However, even if the celestial was sealed, his strength was enough. The celestial slightly opened his mouth, and his entire body suddenly disappeared. When he reappeared, he had fallen on top of Sun Cheng's head. Seeing this, Sun Cheng was really frightened. He urged his sub-body, and the Imperial Star Pierce was also shot out. Crack! A stream of light splashed from the celestial's body. The Imperial Star Pierce did not hurt the celestial at all, and the celestial raised his hand and grabbed downwards. The entire space of a few miles was imprisoned, and then with a poof sound, Sun Cheng's sub-body broke apart, exploding into 3-color true qi that rushed in all directions. Woo! The celestial opened his mouth and inhaled, and all the true qi fell into his stomach. At the same time, the celestial's other hand reached into the void. Poof! The multicolored light around Sun Cheng swayed, and the bony arm passed through his body. Sun Cheng opened his mouth to call for help, but the celestial's other head opened its mouth and spat out a green light that fell on his forehead. A faint shadow was pulled out by the green light and fell into the celestial's stomach. Not only that, the celestial's third head opened its mouth again, and a blood shadow flew out of Sun Cheng's body. It was also swallowed by the celestial, and Sun Cheng's body quickly withered and turned into dust. Ha! The celestial killed Sun Cheng, opened its skeleton mouth, and looked at Sun Hao. At this moment, in the distant space, layers of light and shadow flashed, and a human figure appeared in the distorted space. As soon as this human figure appeared, it immediately turned into a sub-body that was hundreds of feet tall. This sub-body was not solid, or a shadow, and was very ethereal. Wenxing. Xiaohua floated in the air involuntarily. When he saw the Void Refinement Realm's sub-body, he immediately said in a low voice, "The Celestial actually alarmed the Wenxing." "You? Who are you?" The Wenxing looked at the Celestial in surprise, and then his gaze fell on Sun Hao, who was escaping in a sorry state. He asked, "Where is Xiaohua?" Sun Hao was shocked, and he forced himself to calm down. He raised his hand and said, "Senior, Xiaohua is behind this monster. We accompanied Xiaohua to train, and suddenly we met this almost invincible monster. Xiaohua was injured by this monster, and I'm afraid he will die soon." Damn it. Xiaohua understood and was secretly anxious. This is a real Confucian cultivator, he came to save me. Unfortunately, Xiaohua could not speak at all, and the Xiaohua inside the Celestial seemed to have lost his mind, and he would not explain. The Wenxing raised his head, squinted his eyes at the Celestial, and asked curiously, "Where did you meet this monster? This thing does not seem to be from the hidden immortal continent." Just as the Wenxing said this, the Celestial moved again. The Celestial's target was naturally Sun Hao. Let's see how the Wenxing would let the Celestial succeed. The Wenxing smiled slightly, and his sub-body moved. He raised his arm, and a four-colored light flashed, falling towards the Celestial's white bones. Boom! The four-colored light was defeated, and the Celestial's white bone hand was also blocked. Oh! The Wenxing was stunned, and looked at the Celestial in disbelief. Then, his body swayed, and his huge sub-body suddenly turned into multicolored light, like a peacock spreading its tail, covering hundreds of miles around. However, this multicolored light only spread slightly, and then suddenly converged, condensing into a four-colored fist, and hit one of the Celestial's heads. Boom! In a huge explosion, the fist flipped the Celestial's body. Roar! The Celestial's body did not stand upright, and with a roar, he swung his two arms forward. Ka-cha-cha! Two lightning bolts comparable to tribulation lightning, and more powerful than the horned dragon, hit the Wenxing's sub-body. Woo! The Wenxing's sub-body quickly teleported, wanting to merge with the void, but the nearby space was once again imprisoned by the lightning. In an even louder explosion, not only was the Wenxing's sub-body sent flying, but the surrounding space was also shattered into pieces. Granny, this is troublesome. The flood rushed to the Dragon King Temple. Xiaohua was somewhat anxious, and called for the Xiaohua in his heart. However, before he could get in touch with bone-honing Xiaohua, a sudden change occurred. The second body of the unknown literary sage that came to save Xiaohua had just landed, and before he could even straighten up, Sun Hao, who was not far from him, suddenly flashed and appeared beside him faster than lightning. Sun Hao strangely stretched out his hand and his arms suddenly lengthened. With a boom, it pierced into the literary sage's second body. Chapter 4071. Awe! Wenxing let out a blood-curdling scream. The originally illusory sub-body suddenly solidified, trembling uncontrollably under Sun Hao's sneak attack. Wenxing turned his head with great difficulty, looking at Sun Hao with extreme confusion. However, a cold smile appeared on Sun Hao's face, a layer of inscriptions appeared on his arm. As the inscriptions entered his body, Wenxing's sub-body gradually shrank, and in the end, Sun Hao opened his mouth. Woo! A four-colored blood shadow fell into his mouth, and Wenxing's physical body along with his sub-body completely disappeared. Sun Hao killed a Wenxing faster than a Devis killed a martial grandmaster. Wang Wang! Sun Hao's body expanded uncontrollably as the inscriptions poured in. The sub-body that appeared above his head previously also expanded and disappeared into it. After Sun Hao's body flickered a few times, suddenly, like Wen Xing before, it became illusory, becoming one with the surrounding space. Boom! A loud sound rang out. Immediately after, a powerful Wen Chu star energy came from the void and landed on Sun Hao's body. A dazzling star-like battle armor formed with the naked eye. Seeing everything that happened so suddenly, Xiaohua was dumbfounded, his heart once again fell into an ice cave. This is a Wen Xing. How can Sun Hao be a Wen Xing? Why did he attack that Wen Xing? Boom! Without waiting for Xiaohua to think, Sun Hao's figure flashed and appeared in front of the Devis. Sun Hao didn't take out any imperial equipment, directly smashing a fist towards the Devis' head. Woo! The Devis naturally wouldn't show weakness, swinging his fist to meet the attack. The two fists collided, letting out a rumbling sound. Immediately after, as the two waved their hands and raised their legs, lightning surged, as if thousands of lightning bolts were wreaking havoc in the entire space. The might of this lightning was so powerful that the entire Black Ruins mountain was shaking. Sun Hao was from a military background. It looked like his fists and legs were very powerful, and the Devis skills were also extraordinary. Big Dipper Divine Fist and Ethereal Steps were methodical, not losing out. This isn't Sun Hao, this definitely isn't Sun Hao. Xiaohua's figure was pushed towards Black Ruins Mountain by the lightning from the punches and kicks. He gradually approached Sun Jian, but Xiaohua didn't care about any of this. He only stared at the battle between the diva and Sun Hao. After watching for a while, he finally understood. This Sun Hao should be his so-called master's clone. Xiaohua, what's going on? Sun Jian's voice came from behind Xiaohua's back. Xiaohua couldn't turn his head and said, don't mention these two, say something. Sun Jian urged, just now, that Confucian martial grandmaster actually killed a literary sage. Where did he come from? Damn it, it's not that I don't want to talk. Xiaohua shouted, I already said it, you can't hear me. Sun Hao, Sun's eyes, Xiaohua, Wen Xing, Wen's. Xiaohua looked at true monarch Qing Yuan, who was loyal to the immortal emperor, and said with a bitter smile, Sun Jian, if you didn't come, you might still be alive, but since you helped me up, I'm afraid you'll be killed by Sun Hao like that sage of literature. Sun Hao. Sun Jian looked over, seeming to understand something. The one who died just now was called Sun Qing, and the one I killed was called Wu Han. Xiaohua explained, they took a fancy to something I had and wanted to take it away, that's why they chased me all the way from Liao River to Black Ruins Mountain. That sage of literature just now was a true Confucian cultivator. He was invited here by me using the True Confucian's token. True Confucian. You have the True Confucian's token. Sun Hao looked at Xiaohua in surprise, obviously not believing him. Xiaohua nodded and didn't explain further. At this moment, Sun Hao's figure was struck by lightning by the Devis, a small part of his body was damaged, and waves of starlight gushed out. Caw! The sound of a sword rang out, followed by the cries of phoenixes and the roars of dragons. A long sword appeared in Sun Hao's hand. The hilt of this sword was shaped like a heart, and the heart was engraved with the patterns of dragons, phoenixes, and other beasts. Also, the edge of the sword under the sword light didn't look sharp, as if it hadn't been sharpened. There were no spikes at the tip of the sword, only an oval shape. The cries of phoenixes and the roars of dragons came from the patterns of the 10,000 beasts. The sword light of the treasured sword was different from ordinary sword light. It didn't have the coldness of killing, but instead had a heart-penetrating warmth. The silver sword light contained 10,000 layers of sword intent. The inner layer of this sword intent was the mountains and rivers, the middle layer was the myriad phenomena of the world, and the outer layer was the pavilions of the sky and the chains of inscriptions. Although the Devis' desolate aura was heavy, it instantly collapsed under this warm sword intent. Tian. Son of Heaven's sword. Xiaohua was dumbfounded again. This was really fate. In the blood pool of the gods and devils, the Son of Heaven's sword suppressed the blood bone, and here, the Devis encountered the Son of Heaven's sword again. Could the Devis defeat the Son of Heaven's sword this time? No. Unexpectedly, Sun Jian exposed the truth. This isn't the real Son of Heaven's sword. This is only the outer layer of the Son of Heaven's sword. However, the Son of Heaven's sword was the Son of Heaven's sword. It was only the outer layer, and similarly, the Devis sealed by the laws of heaven and earth couldn't compare to it. When the Son of Heaven's sword landed on the Devis flesh and blood rapidly withered, and the aura that could tear the void was also swept away. Roar! Bonehone Xiaohua roared in pain, and landed in front of Xiaohua with the Devis that were only bones left. Quickly take out that piece of blood bone. Xiaohua shouted. Sun Jian reached out and took out the blood bone. Xiaohua's mind swept, sending the lifeless white bone into the space, and the bonehone Xiaohua fell into Xiaohua's body. Sun Jian. Sun Hao held the Son of Heaven's sword and said coldly, "Bring Xiaohua here, then swear that you won't speak of today's matter. This old man can spare your life." He he. Sun Jian laughed coldly. He grabbed Xiaohua with one hand and placed the blood bone into his bosom with the other. He said, "You spared my life, but can you also spare the lives of the Black Ruins Mountain garrison?" No. Sun Hao shook his head. Anyone who saw today's matter must die. Is it because they saw you holding the Son of Heaven's sword? Sun Jian laughed loudly. Who are you? You actually dare to hold the Son of Heaven's sword that only the immortal emperor can possess. Could it be, you still want to report this matter to the immortal emperor? Sun Hao asked with interest. Sun Jian laughed coldly. Everyone has the right to punish the unfilial Son of Heaven and Earth. Do you think that by sparing my life, I won't report it to the immortal emperor? Foolish loyalty. Sun Hao sighed. This old man really doesn't know what benefits the immortal emperor gave you to actually treat him like this. I am a true lord of the immortal palace, and a military disciple. Naturally, I have to be loyal to the immortal emperor. Sun Jian said word by word. I don't need any benefits. Since that's the case, then, you can die. Be loyal to that dog's-head immortal emperor of yours. Sun Hao waved the Son of Heaven's sword calmly, and the sword's light enveloped an area of several thousand li. At that moment, there was a loud hum. The thing Sun Jian had been hiding beneath him all this time moved. A beam of light shot behind him, and the void-shattering eye between his brows opened. The grayish-white beam of light followed the previous one and landed on the distant empty black ruin. The Kunlun mirror. Sun Hao was shocked. Didn't the immortal emperor take it back already? As he spoke, Sun Hao hastily raised his hand, and his sealing force instantly controlled the area within 1,000 li. However, Sun Hao was still too late. The Kunlun mirror and void-shattering eye's beam of light landed on empty black ruin emitted a strange sound, and a thumb-sized crack appeared in the mountain's outline. Then, a black wind rushed out from within, following the beam of light and enveloping Xiaohua and Sun Jian. Wherever the black wind passed, forget Sun Hao's sealing force, even the Son of Heaven's sword's light was broken. Many of the immortal soldiers and immortal generals stationed around empty black ruin were swept in by the black wind. Damn it. Sun Hao cursed, and the Son of Heaven's sword in his hand hastily slashed down. Boom. The sword's light landed, and a huge spatial crack appeared. However, in front of the crack, the black wind still fell into empty black ruin. Xiaohua, Sun Jian, and hundreds of immortal soldiers and generals fell into empty black ruin. Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! Sun Hao cursed loudly, and the Son of Heaven's sword in his hand slashed down again. Ah! Miserable screams rang out. Pft pft. Sounds of flesh and blood bursting rang out. In just a few breaths, Sun Hao had killed all of true monarch Qing Yuan's immortal soldiers and generals. In the end, Sun Hao's eyes flashed with the eye-clearing art. He swept his left and right, then rubbed his hands together. Heavenly fire descended, enveloping everything within 1,000 li. All of the corpses, including Sun Cheng and that literary sage, were burned to ashes. Only then did he disappear into the void with a dark expression. Although Xiaohua couldn't see Sun Hao's actions, when Sun Jian approached him, he already knew the fate of Sun Jian and the troops stationed at Black Ruin. Sun Hao, who had taken out the Son of Heaven's sword, couldn't possibly let anyone know he possessed it. Even if it was just the outer shell of the Son of Heaven's sword. However, what he didn't expect was that Sun Jian, who had severed all ties with him, would actually save him. Of course, the instant the black wind rose and swept him in, Xiaohua also understood in his heart. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Sun Jian was an upright person. Since he had severed all ties with him, then he had severed all ties with him. This Sun Hao had the outer shell of the Son of Heaven's sword in his hand. It was very obvious that among the Confucian cultivators, he was a power that could stand up to the immortal emperor. If he fell into Sun Hao's hands, not to mention the 9 cauldrons that he had never revealed to Sun Jian, even the bones of the celestial being were a great threat to the immortal emperor. Sun Jian wasn't actually saving him, but preventing him from falling into Sun Hao's hands. He didn't want to cause trouble for the immortal emperor and the immortal palace. Damn it, the blood bone of the celestial being is still in this bastard's possession. Xiaohua was speechless at this loyal Sun Jian. This bastard couldn't have left the blood bone in empty black ruin, right? Although Xiaohua thought so, he only had a body of divine abilities. Besides his mind, he couldn't even move anything else. He could only allow Sun Jian to drag him into the spatial crack created by the black wind. Chapter 4072. The space crack is pitch black and devoid of light. There's not even a trace of sound. It's as silent as a tomb. With Xiaohua's strength, he can barely see the situation around him. At this moment, Sun Jian seems to be in the same situation as Xiaohua. His body is powerlessly floating in the darkness. His hands and feet are blown away by the black wind. However, his left hand is still firmly holding on to Xiaohua. Strange. Xiaohua is somewhat bewildered. This heavenly prison doesn't seem to be as powerful as Sun Jian said. The ignorant were naturally fearless. Xiaohua rolled his eyes and looked around, while Sun Jian and the immortal soldiers and immortal generals who were dragged into the heavenly prison all revealed a look of horror. They exerted all their strength to circulate their true energy to protect themselves. Sun Jian. Xiaohua opens his mouth. However, his voice is extremely long. It's so long that even Xiaohua himself can't hear it clearly. Sun Jian seems to have heard Xiaohua's voice. He slightly turns his head. There's an inquiring look in his eyes. He opens his mouth and also drags out the syllables. What do you want? Xiaohua is helpless. His eyes inexplicably turn and he agrees. Sun Jian doesn't know what Xiaohua means. However, he nods at Xiaohua and clenches his left hand again. His eyes are telling Xiaohua to be at ease. All right. Xiaohua secretly nods in his heart. Although this Sun Jian is an immortal emperor's loyal follower, he's also a trustworthy person. In this heavenly prison, having such a person to support each other can be considered a kind of luck. Although the black wind is powerful, it's impossible to determine the distance in the heavenly prison. Therefore, for an entire incense stick's worth of time, the two of them don't stop moving. However, the two of them don't realize how far they've been blown by the black wind. The floating immortal soldiers and immortal generals around the two of them also maintain their previous posture. There's no change. Could it be that we're just floating like this? Xiaohua suddenly has a kind of enlightenment. A trace of fear appears in his heart. This heavenly prison is endless. As long as a cultivator falls into this heavenly prison, they'll just float until the end of their lifespan. Isn't that so? This heavenly prison doesn't have the world's origin energy. There's no righteous energy. Cultivators who come here can't cultivate at all. Sun Jian and the other immortal soldiers and immortal generals were no different from me. They couldn't even move their bodies. What were they cultivating? I can only slowly grow old here and die. Thinking of quietly waiting until I die of old age, an indescribable fear arises in Xiaohua's heart. This is the terror of the heavenly prison. Xiaohua floated peacefully for more than 10 days. If it wasn't for the howling of the black wind, Xiaohua felt as if he hadn't moved at all. Even his blood essence that had been absorbed by the celestials didn't recover in the slightest. What's more, the surroundings were always pitch black, and it was impossible to distinguish any changes. Xiaohua and Sun Jian could only express their intentions through the movement of their eyes. Sigh. For no reason, Xiaohua sighed in his heart. At this point, he already understood that the sky prison of Black Ruins Mountain was a warning sign of his sudden impulse. It was a huge crisis that could not be avoided, regardless of whether one was training or cultivating in seclusion. The root of this crisis was the 9 continents cauldrons. If he was training, he couldn't avoid looking for the Yuzhou cauldrons. Sun Cheng was guarding the Yuzhou cauldrons, waiting for him to come. He would definitely walk right into the trap. And if he didn't come out of seclusion, Sun Hao would also follow Sun Cheng's clues to find him. With Wenxing's strength, with the power to control the Son of Heaven sword, with the ambition to confront an immortal emperor, Sun Hao would definitely find him. He might even find the Fortune Gate in the soaring Dragon Mountain range. At that time, the one who would lose would not be Xiaohua himself, but the entire Dao Gate. Thinking of this, Xiaohua's heart calmed down. After all, he had left enough things in the soaring Dragon Mountain range, and the disciples there were enough. In the future, the Fortune Gate would definitely stand out and occupy a place in the hidden immortal continent. It's just a pity that the disciples in this Xiao space. Xiaohua felt a little regretful. I shouldn't have brought them out. Although Xiaohua's mind could move, ever since he entered the heavenly prison, Xiaohua found that his mind could not enter the space, so he couldn't see the situation in the space. But suddenly, Xiaohua's heart was moved. This Xiao has drifted in the heavenly prison for a lifetime, but the space is independent. Fu Jiwen and the others can also live a wonderful life. Moreover, the Fortune Gate controlled by green-robed Xiaohua also has its own life. Although I don't know what the space will be like after I die, I know that as long as I'm alive, the space will exist, and everything inside will be wonderful. Damn it! So what if the heavenly prison? So what if I drift quietly like this for a lifetime? For these disciples, for Xue Xue and Master in the dark side of the space, I also have to live. For every day I live, they can live. After thinking this through, Xiaohua's mind became clear. The fear and terror from before all disappeared. This boundless darkness and boundless loneliness had all become fleeting clouds. Besides, don't this Xiao have true monarch Qing Yuan by his side? It can't be said that I'm lonely. It's a pity that this guy is a man. If it were Axan, that would be even better. Looking at Sun Jian floating beside him, the corners of Xiao Hua's mouth curled into a smile. Sun Jian seemed to have noticed Xiao Hua's abnormality. With some difficulty, he slightly tilted his head and looked at Xiao Hua. At this time, Xiao Hua seemed to have seen something terrifying, and his face changed greatly. Oh! Sun Jian was also shocked. He hurriedly followed Xiao Hua's gaze and saw that in the pitch-black darkness, not more than 100 feet away from the two of them, there were two dazzling threads of light. These threads of light twisted into an irregular shape, and on the other side of the threads of light were the three immortal soldiers who had fallen into the heavenly prison with Sun Jian. These three immortal soldiers were unable to move like Sun Jian and the others, and they also floated forward. However, the moment the threads of light appeared, the three immortal soldiers' hair began to turn white, and wrinkles began to appear on their faces. Then, their hair turned into nothingness, and their flesh began to disappear. In the end, the three immortal soldiers had turned into white bones. In the time it took to drink a cup of tea, the three immortal soldiers' bones turned into dust, and the immortal armor on their bodies rusted, slowly broke, and finally disappeared. The passage of time. Innate restriction. Looking at the familiar scene, Xiao Hua's heart shook greatly. He naturally thought of the mysterious innate formation in the depths of the West Ocean. Therefore, he hurriedly looked at Sun Jian. Fortunately, Sun Jian didn't change at all. On the other side of the two twisted threads of light, all the immortal soldiers and immortal generals didn't change at all. They didn't seem to have aged rapidly with the passage of time. Moreover, from the edge of the threads of light, there was a faint obscure fluctuation. Xiao Hua was shocked, and Sun Jian was scared out of his wits. Seeing this situation, how could he not know what was so terrifying about the heavenly prison? The law of time, no immortal palace's cultivators, including immortal emperors, could survive in this law of time. Naturally, no one could leave the heavenly prison alive. My essence blood has a trace of recovery. The obscure fluctuation passed through Xiao Hua's body, and he suddenly felt a trace of it. Suddenly, Xiao Hua's expression changed. Could it be that fluctuation? Yes, that fluctuation might be the fluctuation of the law of time. Xiao Hua understood. There weren't any fluctuations in the darkness before, so there was no time, so my essence blood couldn't recover for a long time. Now, this area has the law of time, so I can recover my essence blood. So, in the other area I saw just now, the law of time there is different from here. Then, is it because their time is faster? Is our time slow? Or is it that we saw them die of old age extremely quickly, and they see us die of old age extremely quickly too? Even though we saw them die of old age, they are still living well in that area like us. In an instant, Xiao Hua thought a lot, and Sun Jian grabbed Xiao Hua's hand with more force. Not good. Just as Xiao Hua's essence blood was recovering slightly, many halos flashed in the darkness in front of him. These halos weren't circular, and like the threads of light they saw before, they were abnormally distorted and didn't have any shape at all. These halos were originally as gorgeous as fireworks in the mortal world, but now in the eyes of Xiao Hua, Sun Jian, and the others, they were like the most terrifying weapons of time. Everyone's eyes revealed despair. They clearly knew that behind each halo was a world of its own. In this world, there was no such thing as strength or cultivation. Everything was controlled by the fluctuations of time. The power, reputation, and strength that they had been pursuing would all disappear in an instant after a fluctuation. Schwa. Just as everyone was panicking, another fluctuation appeared out of thin air. However, this fluctuation didn't have any effect on them. Everyone looked at each other in panic, but no one felt anything special. However, Xiaohua was different from the others. He felt as if he had come back from the jaws of death. His heart was filled with ecstasy. Isn't this a commonly seen fluctuation in the void? No, this fluctuation is even sharper than the fluctuation of this Xiao's nascent soul. It seems to be similar to the fluctuation of the blood bone in the blood pool of the gods and devils. If this fluctuation falls into the formless nascent soul, it will definitely stimulate the cultivation of the nascent soul. This Xiao understands. At this moment, although Xiaohua didn't know what this fluctuation was, he had a faint understanding in his heart. When this Xiao was pregnant in the void, I relied on this fluctuation. Moreover, that day when the nascent soul pill fell into my stomach, it also turned into a kind of strange fluctuation. In the blood pool of the gods and devils, it was also a kind of fluctuation that tempered the body. Could it be that this fluctuation is the essence of the world's origin qi, noble qi, or even the essence of dragon qi? In the immortal world, I need to use fluctuations to cultivate. No. The immortal world is the legendary immortal qi, and the dragon domain is the dragon spirit qi. Could it be, the cultivation method of this fluctuation is higher than that of the immortal world? You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.